Chapter 1609, Will Holy Artifact, Formless Book. The Supreme Will Realm Expert Strikes. 2. He casually clicked on the information of a soldier and looked at the Supreme Blessing. Supreme Blessing Name, Conqueror, Supreme Blessing Effect. When the soldiers under your command fight the enemy, their combat strength will increase by 10% for every 10 minutes of continuous battle, up to a maximum of 60%. When the Conqueror effect is stacked to 60%, the soldiers who have the Supreme Blessing will obtain Life Drain ability when fighting the enemy. They can continuously absorb the life force of the enemy in battle to recover their injuries. The Conqueror effect and Life Drain effect will disappear after 60 minutes. It's a practical blessing. Zhou Fight nodded in satisfaction. Not only could it increase one's combat strength, it could also increase one's recovery effect. This supreme blessing was simply perfect. Then, he came back to his senses and heard what Monin and Sheila had said. Yeah. Does this Monin still have a trump card that he hasn't used? Zhou Fight was a little surprised. Then, he saw Monin take out a blood-colored book from his storage treasure. Seeing that Zhou Fight was also looking at him, he smiled calmly and introduced, "Few enemies have been able to drive me to this point where I have no choice but to use it. Common people's regal, you're very impressive, so I'll bestow you with the highest honor of dying, to be able to die in the hands of my ancestors' formless book." After he finished speaking, he calmly flipped through the formless book in his hand. Zhou Fight was naturally not stupid enough to let he calmly use his means. He immediately opened his dragon mouth and saw a terrifying colorful dragon breath gather in his mouth. This dazzling dragon breath contained the power of the Abyss Dragon Breath, the Time Dragon Breath, the Elemental Dragon Breath, the Destruction Dragon Breath, the Star Dragon Breath, the Origin Dragon Breath, and various other top-notch Dragon God Dragon Breaths. When they gathered together, coupled with the power of the 95 Supreme King Dragon God that Zhou Fight had transformed into, the power of this dragon breath reached an earth-shattering level. Roar! An earth-shattering dragon roar rang out. The next second, a dazzling dragon breath spewed out of his mouth and struck Monin. Monin did not seem to care about this at all. As he flipped through the formless book in his hand, he muttered to himself. Common people's regal's current strength is probably even stronger than Corpse Demon Dragon. It seems that an ordinary quasi-supreme willpower expert won't be able to deal with this guy. We can only invite that person's formless true blood. As he spoke, Zhou Fight's supreme dragon breath also descended on Monin's head. At that moment, the formless book in Monin's hand suddenly emitted a blood-colored light. This blood-colored light quickly formed a blood-colored light barrier around the book and Monin, enveloping them. When Zhou Fight's supreme dragon breath landed on the blood-colored light barrier, it was actually blocked by the blood-colored light barrier. It could not injure Monin at all. When Zhou Fight saw this, surprise flashed across his golden dragon eyes. He looked at the formless book in the other party's hand and felt the powerful aura emitted from it. He muttered, "Will Holy Artifact. This Monin actually has a Will Holy Artifact." His expression turned solemn. Even though he also had a Will Holy Artifact, it only had supplementary effects. Now that Monin had taken it out, it probably had an offensive effect. That's fine. Even if I die, it's just a clone. All the treasures on me can be directly thrown into the #1 treasure vault for safekeeping. There's no need to worry about them being lost. In that case, let's see what level my strongest combat strength has reached. Is it comparable to a supreme will? Facing Monin, who seemed to possess an offensive Will Holy Artifact, not only was Zhou Fight not afraid, he even had the thought of challenging the limits of his combat strength. If it were Zhou himself, he probably wouldn't have made such a choice. However, Zhou Fight did it without hesitation. When Monin saw that Zhou Fight was not afraid and was even eager to give it a try, his originally confident heart became uncertain. Why did this guy look like he was not afraid at all? Could it be that he couldn't tell that what I was about to use was a supreme will level technique? Monin took a deep breath and decided not to think about it anymore. Since he had already activated the formless book, no matter what methods Zhou Fight had, he had to take them. He had no choice but to shoot. Soon, he flipped to the page he wanted. A bloated being with dark purple skin and many complicated void engravings engraved on the surface of his skin was engraved on this page. It was drawn in blood and looked very realistic and bloody. Monin looked at him and gently tapped the existence. The next second, he felt that the Supreme God's divine power in his body was quickly consumed and fused into the existence on the page. In less than half a second, nearly 70% of the Supreme God's divine power in his body was completely absorbed. Monin's face was pale. His voice was weak and respectful. Ultimate Void Race, Monin. Ancestor, Honorable Harlong, please take action to resolve the future threat of our Ultimate Void Race. As soon as he finished speaking, the portrait of Honorable Harlong expanded rapidly. In just a moment, it left the paper and stood on it, becoming an ultimate void creature the size of a palm. He sized up his divine body and said unhappily, "Your supreme divine power is too weak. This divine body of mine only has 1/10,000th of the power I had at my peak. If it were used by Montague, I would have at least half the combat power I had at my peak. Why did he give you the holy artifact of his will? Isn't that a complete waste?" Monin revealed an awkward expression when he heard this. Then, he said solemnly, "Ancestor Meng Tuo can't make a move. Otherwise, the Supreme Will will also send an existence at the Supreme Will realm under his command. In order for me to successfully kill the Supreme Lord's reserve army, Ancestor boldly lent me the formless book and left a portrait of your true blood in it." "I see. Forget it, forget it. Let me, this dead ancestor, do my best for the future of our Ultimate Void clan." After saying that, Venerable Harlong looked at Zhou Fight with a flash of surprise in his eyes. What a young Supreme Lord Reserve army. At such a young age, his strength has already reached such a level. That's right. That's what makes it worth my while. Monin. Remember, I only have the power of one blow. After that, the rest is up to you. Monin immediately said solemnly, "Don't worry, Venerable Harlong. As long as we get rid of this guy, we can easily destroy the remaining God Spirit army of the Supreme Will." "Okay." Honorable Harlong nodded and flew into the sky. As he flew, he saw his divine body rapidly enlarge. 1 light year, 100 light years, 10,000 light years, 100,000 light years, 1,000,000 light years. Venerable Harlong had grown to the size of 1,000,000 light years. At this moment, he could even see the end of the ultimate void battlefield with his vision. He looked down at Zhou Fight and grinned. "Countless years ago, I perished in battle against other alternate universes. I thought I wouldn't wake up again, but now I can see you youngsters again. It's a pity that you and I are on different sides. Otherwise, I would really like to have a chat with the geniuses of your generation to understand your views on cultivation." Harlong sighed in his heart. After experiencing true life and death, he had a new perspective on war and the struggle for benefits. But this didn't affect his killing intent. Common people's regal. Die at the hands of an old man like me. He opened its bloody mouth and bit Zhou Fight. Zhou Fight wanted to resist. However, he quickly realized that he couldn't even move. "Ha ha ha ha," hearing Harlong's laughter, Zhou Fight tried one last time but failed. He simply put away all his treasures and waited quietly. Howl. Harlong ate Zhou Fight in one bite. Seeing this scene, the entire battlefield fell silent. In particular, the response of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's God Spirit Army was even greater. "Everyone, calm down. Nothing happened to His Majesty. Just as the morale of the army was about to be shaken, Bai Yun's voice gave them peace of mind. When the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's God Spirit Army heard this, they immediately believed that nothing would happen to their emperor. They immediately continued to fight the enemy in front of them. On the other side, he enjoyed the flesh and blood of Zhou fight in the beginning after eating Zhou fight in one bite. But his expression quickly changed. Why doesn't it smell like destiny? What about the common people's regal? Chapter 16:10, Victory. 1. Without my life, of course. But you won't get to find out. Behind Harlong, Zhou Fight looked at he calmly and said. Harlong suddenly turned around and saw Zhou Fight, who was completely unharmed. How can you be totally fine? Harlong looked shocked. Then, he didn't have time to think about the reason. He opened his huge mouth again. As he prepared to devour him, he said, I will definitely kill you before I leave. Zhou Fight's expression did not change as he watched this scene. When the shockingly huge mouth descended on his head with supreme might, it was as if it wanted to replicate the scene just now and devour him to death. And yet, just as Harlong was about to swallow Zhou Fight, his huge divine body suddenly turned into countless dark purple blood threads and dissipated. I can't, accompanied by the dissipation of all the dark purple blood threads, Venerable Harlong whimpered indignantly. After the voice faded away, the battlefield returned to calmness. Zhou Fight turned to look at Monen, Sheila, and the three giant beasts under him. They saw, looking at themselves in shock, as if they had seen something that they could not believe. How come you're not dead? After Monen recovered from his shock, he shouted loudly, as if he could not accept the reality in front of him. That was a supreme will realm existence. Even if Venerable Harlong only had 1/10,000th of his strength at his peak, it was definitely not something a puny quasi-supreme will could resist. Not to mention that the common people's regal was only a newly advanced grade 1 supreme god. Sheila, who was far away, also stared at Zhou Fight, wanting to hear what reason he had to give. When Zhou Fight saw that they was so inquisitive, he smiled and said, Idiot. He suddenly transformed into the 95 Supreme King Dragon God and slashed at Monen with the Xian Yuan Divine Sword in his mouth. Even though Monen was still shocked that the common people's regal could withstand a single attack from Harlong and not die, he was not careless when he saw Harlong's attack. He immediately took out a grade 2 supreme divine artifact that looked like a shield to defend against Harlong's attack. The distance between the two sides disappeared in the blink of an eye. The next second, the Xian Yuan Divine Sword mentioned by the 95 Supreme King Dragon God slashed at Monen's shield. Boom 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 boom. Where the Divine Sword and shield collided, a series of explosions occurred in the void. The ultimate void within a radius of 10 light-years shattered, revealing the ultimate void great cosmos behind the ultimate void battleground. At a glance, one could even see other alternate universes. Soon, however, the shattered ultimate void began repairing itself. After the light of the void explosion dissipated, they saw the 95 Supreme King Dragon God and Monen wrestling with each other through the Xian Yuan Divine Sword and the shield. Neither side was willing to give in. They were both using their swords and shields to determine the victor. It was as if the sword would break the opponent's shield first. It all depended on whether the shield could defend against his opponent's sword attacks. Sheila saw this situation and wanted to break out of the situation by joining in. However, the corpse demon dragon had been attacking him crazily, making him unable to be distracted at all. Sheila saw this situation and wanted to break out of the situation by joining in. However, the corpse demon dragon had been attacking him crazily, making him unable to be distracted at all. You have the will holy artifact, so you should be able to deal with the common people's regal, right? Sheila, who could not help at all, could only defend against the corpse demon dragon's attack while praying in his heart. However, in the next moment, he saw a scene that made him despair. Zhou Fight, who was fighting Monen, suddenly smiled sinisterly. "Is this all you've got, Monen?" "What?" Monen, who was resisting the power of Zhou Fight's Xian Yuan divine sword with all his might, saw that Zhou Fight still had strength left. His expression changed drastically. The next second, an even more terrifying power erupted from the Xian Yuan divine sword, and in the blink of an eye, it broke the Grade 2 Supreme Divine Artifact shield in front of Monen. Immediately after, the Xian Yuan divine sword slashed at Monen without stopping, and he was beheaded in an instant. The moment Zhou Fight swept past Monen's body, he suddenly stretched out his dragon claw and grabbed Monen's head. Then, he twisted it forcefully, and a dark purple Supreme God Lattice appeared in his hand. The moment Zhou Fight swept past Monen's body, he suddenly stretched out his dragon claw and grabbed Monen's head. Then, he twisted it forcefully, and a dark purple Supreme God Lattice appeared in his hand. However, at this moment, he was only a body of will. After being trapped by Zhou Fight's Supreme God, he could not do anything at all. He could only watch as Zhou Fight controlled him at will. Suddenly, Zhou Fight seemed to have heard something and smiled. "Spare you? It's not impossible." His expression turned solemn, and he said, "Then, swear on your own will that from now on, you will leave the ultimate void race and officially join this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, becoming a member of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's subjects. As long as you can do it, this Emperor will promise to let you live." Monen's expression changed. He hesitated for a long time, but when he saw Zhou Fight's increasingly dangerous gaze, he was immediately alarmed. He didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly agreed. He began to say that he was willing to join the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become a subject of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. When Zhou Fight felt the connection between him and the other party, a smile appeared on his face. From then on, other than the main body and clone, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom finally had another quasi-supreme willpower realm expert. Moreover, the strength of this quasi-supreme willpower realm expert was considered not bad even among all the quasi-supreme willpower realm experts. Chapter 1611, Victory. 2. Monen's strength was almost comparable to the Supreme God of the Heavenly Blade, who had been determined by the Supreme Will and had a chance of advancing to the Supreme Will realm in the future. He had an additional general under his command. Zhou Fight was in a good mood. At this moment, after Monen announced that he had joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, due to the influence of his Lord Talent, he immediately became much more respectful to Zhou Fight. "Greetings, Your Majesty," he said respectfully. Zhou Fight nodded. Then, he opened the other party's attribute panel. When he saw that the other party's loyalty was only 80 points, he couldn't help but shake his head. As expected of a quasi-supreme will realm expert. At their level, even the mythical tier, unique Lord Talent, or even the supreme unique Lord Talent had a very limited impact on them. Otherwise, if it were another Master God tier, even if he had just joined, his loyalty would at least be above 90. I have to get my main body to get a supreme, the only level of Lord Talent to increase the loyalty of subjects. Otherwise, just relying on the peaceful times to stabilize and increase the loyalty of the new subjects would be somewhat unsafe. Zhou Fight thought to himself. The destructive power of a quasi-supreme will expert was simply too great. If they did not have a powerful method to ensure that they would not wreak havoc at a time and place that they did not notice, then it was necessary to create a supreme, the only level of Lord Talent that could increase the loyalty of the subjects. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Leave it to the main body to figure it out. Then, he turned his gaze and looked at Sheila, who was riding many Master God tier and Supreme God level beasts to deal with the corpse demon dragon. Sheila had always been paying attention to the situation on Zhou Feit's side. When he saw Monan being killed by Zhou Feit, he had a bad premonition. When Sheila saw that Zhou Feit had noticed him, his heart sank. Now that he was entangled by the corpse demon dragon, he was in a state where he could neither fight nor run away. Now that the common people's regal was free to deal with him, what should he do next? He frantically racked his brains to think of a way to break out of this situation. Right at that moment, he saw Zhou Feit flying towards him with the Xian Yuan divine sword in his mouth. As he flew over, he said loudly, "Sheila. On account of your endless cultivation, this emperor can give you a chance to live. However, you want to announce that you will leave the ultimate void race and join this emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Are you willing to become a citizen of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom?" Sheila was stunned for a moment before he said angrily, "You want me to join the Supreme Will? Common people's regal, don't even think about it. I'm a god spirit under the Void Emperor in my life, and there'll be a dead soul under the Void Emperor in my death. I definitely won't join your doomed camp. He is a loyal servant of the Lord. Then this emperor will fulfill your wish. Become a dead soul before meeting your great Void Emperor. As long as you can still see him." Zhou Feit said coldly. Then, he turned into a golden stream of light and flew towards Sheila. "Attack! Attack! Attack! Stop this sword!" Sheila felt an extremely terrifying sense of danger from Zhou Feit's sword. It was almost instinctive. He had all the behemoths under his command charge at Zhou Feit, hoping to stop his attack. However, Zhou Feit, who had transformed into the 95 Supreme King Dragon God, was comparable to a top-notch quasi-supreme willpower realm expert. At this moment, he was using the Xian Yuan divine sword in his mouth to execute the sword Dao that contained the power of the myriad method star palm. The combination of the two made the power contained in his sword reach an incomparably terrifying level. A sword light flashed past. Sheila looked at the top of his head. Immediately after, an extremely resplendent sword light extended from his head to the lowest part of his divine body. Crack! His divine body was suddenly split into two. Even the supreme god divine spark in his body was split into two. As for Sheila's will that resided in the divine spark, it was even destroyed by Zhou Feit's sword. Quasi-supreme willpower realm expert, Sheila, dead. When Zhou Feit saw this, he had an idea. The body of the dragon god that he had transformed into, which was 90,000 light-years tall, quickly disappeared. After the dragon god's body dissipated, Zhou Feit stood where the dragon god was. He raised his hand and waved. Sheila's body, which had been split into two, flew towards him. When they flew close, Zhou Feit made up his mind and chose to extract the corpse. The next second, billions of spoils of war erupted from Sheila's corpse and formed an ocean of loots around him. Zhou Feit was not surprised by this. He was in existence with the strength of a quasi-supreme will after all. It was normal for him to have many spoils of war. Just like he had said, if all his treasures were dropped from the number 1 treasure vault, the total number of treasures would be enough to fill 10 boundless universes or even more. Therefore, he was not at all surprised by the loots in front of him. Let me see what good things a normal quasi-supreme will realm existence has. Zhou Feit said with interest. Then, he first used a world ring to store all the treasures below the Master God tier level. To the current Zhou Feit, unless it was a Supreme God or a Supreme God level treasure, he would not be too interested. Chapter 16:12, Victory. 3. He would throw these treasures below the level of Master God tier into the Divine Kingdom's treasury for his Divine Kingdom to control. Then, he looked at the treasures in front of him that were at least at the Grade 1 Supreme God level. 57,612 ordinary Supreme God level treasures. 511 Supreme Divine Artifacts. 72 Quasi-Supreme Will Realm Treasures. 16 Quasi-Supreme Will Divine Artifacts. In addition, there are more than 200 Master God tier Giant Beast Pets, as well as an injured and unconscious Grade 2 Supreme God Giant Beast Pet. No wonder it didn't fight against the Corpse Demon Dragon. It turns out that it was injured and unconscious. Zhou Fight nodded in satisfaction after reading it. This fellow's wealth was even richer than Becky's. As expected of the ultimate void race, known for their rich heritage. How many treasures did they salvage in the void? Zhou Fight could not help but feel curious again. Right at that moment, the 16 Supreme God-level beasts and hundreds of Master God tier and Supreme God beasts flew over from afar with apprehensive expressions and stood obediently in front of Zhou Fight. Sir, Sheila is dead. We don't want to die. We want to be your subordinates. One of the Grade 4 Supreme Gods said nervously. Zhou Fight looked at their obedient appearance and could not help but laugh. This emperor killed your master. Are you really willing to submit to this emperor from the bottom of your hearts? You can't be saying that you want to submit to this emperor on the surface, but in reality, you're secretly looking for an opportunity to plot against this emperor so that you can avenge your master, right? Of course we're not. Sheila would usually use violence to make us submit to him and often hurt us with painful punishments. We've long been dissatisfied with him. Your Majesty, you killed him and saved us. We can't be more grateful to you. Why would we think of harming you? Yeah. These behemoths hurriedly explained to Zhou Fight, afraid that he would misunderstand them. At the same time, they looked at Zhou Fight with fear in their eyes. As pets, they naturally knew how strong Sheila and Monin were. However, even such a strong guy was easily defeated by this Supreme Lord Reserve Army. They simply did not dare to imagine that less than a year ago, this Supreme Lord Reserve Army was just an ordinary life form without any extraordinary tier powers. How did he do it? It was unbelievable. Say that you are willing to join the real Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and become this Emperor's subject of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. This Emperor will spare your lives. Zhou Fight said calmly. I, my lord. They hurriedly agreed and immediately followed Zhou Fight's request. Zhou Fight smiled after hearing this. After today's battle, not only did he obtain a quasi-supreme willpower subordinate, he also obtained 16 Supreme Gods and 100 Master Gods. This was even without using the Son of Destiny in the land of Earth, a minister of the king. Today's gains had truly exceeded his imagination. Right at that moment, the Corpse Demon Dragon also flew in front of him. His aura was extremely weak, but Hi's eyes were still filled with anticipation as he looked at Zhou Fight. It was as if a child was looking at the father he was so proud of. Zhou Fight looked at the other party and felt that there was not much life left in his body. He said calmly, "You're about to die." Zhou Fight smiled and said without waiting for the Corpse Demon Dragon to react, "However, this emperor promises you that one day, this emperor will definitely revive you. You deserve it. Kid." Upon hearing Zhou Fight's words, a satisfied smile appeared on Corpse Demon Dragon's face. Then, the aura of his divine body suddenly dissipated before it fell into the ultimate void. The Corpse Demon Dragon had fallen. Chapter 16:13, Battle Ends. 1. Zhou Fight looked at the Corpse Demon Dragon's fallen divine body and waved his hand, summoning his divine body over. Then, he took out a world ring and placed the Corpse Demon Dragon's corpse inside before putting it away. He meant what he said. Since he had said that he wanted to revive him, he would definitely think of a way to revive him in the future. However, it wasn't the time yet. Even though he had many supreme gods under him, there was only one Grade 1 Supreme God, Thanatos, who had the ability to revive. And his strength as a Grade 1 Supreme God made it so that he could only revive a Grade 1 Supreme God for the time being. Not to mention the existence of a quasi-supreme will. Zhou Feit frowned slightly. He had to find some methods to revive supreme gods or even quasi-supreme willpower experts as soon as possible. Otherwise, the lives of the supreme gods under him would be in danger. He was already used to winning without any casualties, so he could not accept any casualties among his soldiers. Especially the supreme gods. He knew that his idea was too strange. Who wouldn't die in war? But what to do? He had already been spoiled by the resurrection ability. Furthermore, Zhou Feit did not want to change his thoughts and habits. A war where no one died is strange, but isn't it good? In any case, he felt that a war where no one died was quite good. Zhou Feit stopped thinking and turned to look at the battlefield far away. Then, he nodded. Even though the number of troops brought by Monin and Sheila was terrifying, the combined army of gods under him and the Lord of 10,000 Evils were not much worse. In terms of the number of supreme gods, there was only a difference of 40 to 50. However, the supreme gods under him were all equipped with supreme divine artifacts. Their strength far exceeded their peers. Therefore, when they joined forces with the supreme gods under Lord of 10,000 Evils to deal with these enemies, they would at most feel a little strained and not be considered dangerous at all. He flipped his right hand and saw Monin's divine spark appear in his hand. Then, he took out more than 100 natural treasures that emitted a rich divine power of life from his left hand. With a thought, he saw that the life force inside the 100-odd natural treasures was instantly extracted by Zhou Feit with his powerful willpower. After some purification, they turned into a large amount of ownerless and pure life force that gathered on Monin's divine spark. Monin, pay attention to reconstructing your divine body. Zhou Feit said in a deep voice. Yes, Your Majesty. In the divine spark, Monin's expression turned solemn. He tried his best to release the power of his will and absorb the ownerless divine power of life in the outside world. With the help of these ownerless life forces, his divine body quickly began to condense. In less than a moment, Monin recovered more than half of his divine body. Zhou Feit clicked his tongue. The divine body of a quasi-supreme willpower realm expert required a lot of life divine power. These 100 or so natural treasures were enough to mold the bodies of more than 10 Grade 4 supreme gods, but now, they were only enough to mold more than half of Monin's divine body. He shook his head and did not mind. He took out more than 300 natural treasures and repeated the previous steps to reconstruct Monin's quasi-supreme will divine body. Finally, when more than half of the life divine power of these 300 heavenly treasures was absorbed by Monin's quasi-supreme will realm divine body finally condensed again. However, even though he had the divine body of a quasi-supreme will, his divine spirit realm was only at the lowest Grade 1 supreme god level. Seeing this, Zhou Feit first ate the remaining divine power of life as if he was eating candy under Monin's dumbfounded gaze. Then, he took out a total of 1,000,000 Grade 3 supreme god realm crystals. Come. Absorb as much as you want. This emperor wants to see how many Grade 3 supreme god realm crystals a quasi-supreme willpower realm expert like you can absorb to recover your quasi-supreme willpower realm strength. Zhou Feit said with interest. Monin swallowed his non-existent saliva. Why did he have the illusion that he was being used as an experimental evaluation material? He did not dare to think too much and immediately controlled the power of his will to absorb these Grade 3 Supreme God Realm crystals. A moment later, Zhou Feit realized that he had underestimated the total divine power contained in these 1,000,000 Grade 3 Supreme God Realm crystals. At the same time, he had overestimated the amount of divine power needed by quasi-supreme willpower realm experts. This Monin had only absorbed about 200,000 grade 3 Supreme God Realm divine crystals and raised his strength back to the quasi-supreme Will realm. Seeing this, he put away the remaining Supreme God divine crystals. Monin, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He clearly felt that he had recovered to his peak strength. No. It was not just his peak strength. Because he was a rebuilt divine body, some old hidden injuries had all disappeared. Monin even felt that he was stronger than he was at his peak. He looked at Zhou Fight and rubbed his hands nervously. Your Majesty, my world ring. Zhou Fight did not say anything else and threw his world ring to Monin. After Monin received it, it immediately recognized him as its master again. Then, his will entered. Then, he realized that most of the assets in his world rings had not disappeared. Even his top-notch supreme divine artifacts were quietly placed in the world rings. Their positions had not changed. He even saw a complete set of grade 4 supreme divine artifacts that were higher level, more suitable for him than his original supreme divine artifact in his world ring. Chapter 16:14, Battle Ends. 2. Monin was certain that if he changed into this top-notch supreme divine artifact, his strength would definitely be at least 30% stronger than before he reconstructed his divine body. This supreme divine artifact was undoubtedly bestowed to him by His Majesty. Monin was very grateful to His Majesty. However, his gratitude quickly disappeared because he realized that there was a treasure missing from his world ring. It was also the only missing treasure. That holy artifact of his ancestor, Formless Book. Monin opened his mouth. He carefully glanced at Zhou Fight, who looked normal with mixed feelings. In the end, he did not say that he wanted the Formless Book back. He consoled himself. Is that something you can control? He had already lost the Formless Book to His Majesty. Clearly, His Majesty was more suitable to control the Formless Book than him. He chose to forget that the Formless Book originally belonged to his ancestor. Right at that moment, he discovered that His Majesty, looking at the battlefield below, suddenly raised his right hand. Shortly after, a soft voice sounded. All the people in the world are the king's subjects. Swoosh! A 9-colored domain instantly spread out in all directions with Zhou Fight as the center. In the blink of an eye, it covered an area of 1,000,000 light-years and enveloped the armies of both sides on the battlefield. Then, Zhou Fight instantly felt that half of the supreme divine power in his body instantly disappeared. The next second, the ultimate void race army on the battlefield instantly gave up on fighting. They looked in Zhou Fight's direction with a fanatical expression before bowing to him. Greetings, Your Majesty. Tens of billions of ultimate void god spirits, 5 billion ultimate void true god tiers, more than 30,000 ultimate void master god tiers, and 12 ultimate void supreme gods said respectfully in unison. This scene shocked all the god spirits present. Even the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's God Spirit Army, which was familiar with His Majesty's methods, was stunned. Wasn't he only able to instigate half of the insight defection in the past? When did its effect become 100% now? No, not all of them. Bai Yun and a few supreme gods with good eyesight noticed that most of the supreme gods who were still alive in the Ultimate Void Army did not surrender. Only the 12 Ultimate Void Supreme Gods surrendered. There were still 30 to 40 supreme gods who were still resisting. As for the remaining supreme gods, they were naturally destroyed by Bai Yun and gang. Even though they had also paid a certain number of casualties, in Bai Yun's opinion, these casualties were completely worth it. Kill. Their momentum is gone. Destroy these remaining supreme gods. However, we don't have to be anxious. We can slowly exhaust them to death. They can't escape or resist. Seeing this, Bai Yun immediately ordered. These remaining supreme gods were already turtles in a jar. They had surrounded they with an army. As long as they spent some time, it was very simple to exhaust them to death. The supreme gods naturally understood this logic. They immediately led their armies to surround them, and then continuously attacked these trapped ultimate void supreme gods, beginning to exhaust their divine power and willpower bit by bit. When their divine power and willpower were completely exhausted, it would be the end of them. At the same time, Zhou Feit also looked at the notification of the law skill that appeared in front of him. A text notification appeared. Lord Law Skill Hint, you have used the Grade 1 Supreme God Law Skill, Land of Earth, a Minister of the King. You have successfully changed the thoughts and wills of the life forms in the domain and turned them into subjects loyal to you. Congratulations, you have obtained the loyalty of 51,223,108,371 Ultimate Void God Spirits, 5,181,037,123 Ultimate Void True God Tiers, 31,931 Ultimate Void Master God Tiers, and 12 Ultimate Void Supreme Gods. Zhou Feit nodded in satisfaction after reading it. The use of the Land of Earth, a minister of the king, directly gave him so many god spirits. And what he spent was only some insignificant supreme god divine power. There was only one word to describe this outcome. It was a huge profit. Besides, I still haven't used the one chance of Son of Destiny. Zhou Feit's lips curled up. With the Son of Destiny in the Land of Earth, a minister of the king, the growth of the forces under him would increase again. Then, he glanced at the battlefield where the army was and realized that Bai Yun was leading the other supreme gods to attack the remaining 30-odd ultimate void supreme gods. He looked at Monen. Monen, can you convince them to submit to this emperor? He asked. Hearing this, a troubled expression appeared on Monen's face, but he still nodded firmly. Even though it's unlikely, I can give it a try. Go. Zhou Feit nodded. Monen nodded and turned into a stream of light that flew towards the battlefield. A moment later, Monen returned with injuries of all sizes. He looked ashamed and said, Your Majesty, I failed. They are very firm in their belief in the Void Emperor. I tried my best, but they were unwilling to submit to you, Your Majesty. They even said that I was a shameful traitor and came up to besiege me. If Legion Commander Bai Yun hadn't led the other supreme gods to rescue me, I'm afraid I would have died there. Zhou Feit held back his laughter and said, You've worked hard. This reward is for you. Go back and recuperate. He threw a world ring to Monen as he spoke. After Monen received it, his will entered and took a look. His eyes immediately lit up. In this world ring were a large number of supreme god-level divine medicines that could be used to heal the injuries that he had suffered. Furthermore, even if he used these divine medicines to treat his injuries this time, the remaining divine medicines were enough for him to experience 3 to 4 life and death battles in the future. Then, they would be more than enough to treat him. His Majesty was really a godly tycoon. Thank you for the reward, Your Majesty. He said respectfully. The loyalty on the interface increased by several points. This emperor will not mistreat any subordinate who serves this emperor. Zhou Feit said calmly. Monen was very excited when he heard this. He increasingly felt that joining the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and becoming a subordinate of the common people's regal was the right choice. At this moment, he saw Zhou Feit looking down at the battlefield. Monen, this time, bring these supreme gods together and cooperate with Bai Yun and them to eliminate all these fellows who are unwilling to submit. Don't hold back. He ordered calmly. Yes, Your Majesty. Monen nodded. He knew that this was a chance for him to prove his allegiance. His Majesty's attitude towards his in the future would probably depend on his performance this time. He looked at the ultimate void supreme god below. Some of these supreme gods were once his enemies, some were his friends, some had worked together before, and even though they did not know each other, they had seen each other in the sanctuary. However, no matter what their identities were in the past, it didn't matter now. All Monin knew was that they were about to welcome their death. Kill. Destroy these stubborn enemies. Monin ordered. Then, he immediately charged towards these ultimate void supreme gods who resisted. The other supreme gods and master god tiers followed closely behind and faced the enemy together. The two sides soon engaged in battle. After watching Monin fight with all his might and mercilessly for a while, Zhou Feit nodded in his heart. It seemed that 80 points of loyalty could still be used. However, it was still safer to increase his loyalty to more than 90 points. And with the addition of a quasi-supreme realm expert like Monin, it was easier for Bai Yun and them to suppress these ultimate void supreme gods. In less than an hour, they had completely eliminated these ultimate void supreme gods who resisted. We actually won. The Lord of 10,000 Evils came to Zhou Feit's side, his face filled with disbelief. He looked at Zhou Feit with a blank expression. How did this guy do it? They were two quasi-supreme willpower realm experts, but now, one of them had died and the other had directly become his subordinate. The Lord of 10,000 Evils could not help but recall the day he saw Zhou Feit. At that time, Zhou Feit was not even a supreme god who was clearly envious when he looked at him and his subordinates. But now, he was the one who was envious, but the other party had become the person he was envious of. Is this a different guy from the common people's regal I knew at the beginning? The Lord of 10,000 Evils even had such thoughts. Chapter 16:15, Supreme Will Realm, Meng Tuo. Eternal Immortal Realm. 1. Zhou Feit looked at the confused expression on Lord of 10,000 Evils' face and smiled. What are you looking at, brother demon lord? Nothing. Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled bitterly. I just feel that you're growing too quickly. I feel that in the blink of an eye, I won't be able to catch up to you. He's far behind you in terms of strength and strength. Isn't that a good thing? Zhou Feit smiled. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. He heard Zhou Feit say, you and I are brothers. If my strength and faction become stronger, it will naturally be beneficial to brother demon lord. Is there a downside? The Lord of 10,000 Evils immediately laughed. That's true. The higher the strength of the common people's regal, the only disadvantage for him was that the chances of him obtaining the Supreme Lord from the other party were lower. But the Lord of 10,000 Evils had already recognized reality. Be it to the common people's regal, God King Heaven Punishment, or the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, there was already an extremely obvious difference in strength between him and them, especially compared to the latter two. The difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. In fact, the probability of him obtaining the Supreme Lord's inheritance was very small. Now, there was another common people's regal who was close to those two fellows, but it didn't seem to matter to him. At the thought of this, the Lord of 10,000 Evils felt enlightened. Zhou Feit smiled when he saw this and did not say anything else. He turned around and ordered the battlefield to be cleaned up. Then, he led the army and flew straight to the other void mystic realms. Their goal today was a total of 8 void mystic realms. Now, just the White Dawn void mystic realm alone had delayed them for so long. They had to hurry up and conquer the remaining void mystic realms. Fortunately, after the land of Earth, a minister of the king, the strength of his forces increased again. In the following period of time, conquering the remaining 7 void mystic realms should not be a problem. At the same time, just as the ultimate void god spirit army led by Monin and Sheila was completely destroyed. The holy domain of the ultimate void race. In the holy temple, the Void Emperor was still resting on his holy throne with his eyes closed. The more than 2,000 ultimate Void Supreme Gods below were all looking at the dark silver ceiling above their heads. On the ceiling that originally had more than 2,000 dark silver tiles, more than 100 tiles were completely shattered, causing a large portion of the dark silver ceiling to be damaged, making the holy temple seem like a tattered holy temple. These 2,000 supreme gods understood the meaning of this scene very well. This meant that more than 100 ultimate void supreme gods had died. Moreover, among the more than 100 damaged dark silver tiles, there was a huge tile that was 4 to 5 times larger than the other ordinary tiles. It represented the position of the quasi-supreme willpower realm expert of the ultimate void race. And at this moment, its damage also meant that one of the quasi-supreme will realm experts of the ultimate void race had died. That was an ultimate member of the void race who had the chance to advance to the supreme will realm in the future. Such an existence that concerned the rise and fall of their race actually died. How could they not be furious? The remaining 1,900 ultimate void supreme gods discussed among themselves. As time passed, the discussion of them became louder and louder. In the end, the entire void holy temple was very noisy because of their discussion, like a market. A small number of ultimate void supreme gods who remained silent were used to this. When the ultimate void race, they, invaded the great cosmos, they would have such internal discussions once they encountered a difficult enemy. To put it nicely, this was freedom of speech. To put it bluntly, it was poor organization and discipline. The key was that the Void Emperor rarely cared about their matters. As a result, it was a custom that they had preserved until now. Just as the discussion of these ultimate Void Supreme Gods became more and more intense, the Void Emperor finally said slowly, "Quiet." His voice resounded throughout the entire sanctuary, and the ultimate Void Supreme Gods instantly fell silent. Even though they had extremely free speech, when the Void Emperor spoke, they would also be very obedient. Right at that moment, the figure of a supreme willpower expert of the ultimate void race slowly appeared within the sacred hall. He appeared in the form of a projection. His main body was clearly not in the holy hall or even in the ultimate void battlefield. "Greetings, Your Majesty, Meng Tuo." A supreme willpower practitioner, Meng Tuo, said respectfully. "Meng Tuo. You're here about your junior, aren't you?" The Void Emperor said. "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm here for my descendant, Monen." Meng Tuo's tone was a little agitated. "Monen is the junior who is most likely to advance to the supreme will realm among my descendants. In order to accumulate experience and credit for Monen, I specially lent my treasure, the Formless Book, to him. I didn't expect that not only did he fail to return from crusading against that common people's regal, he even died there. The Formless Book also fell into the hands of the enemy. Your Majesty. I can't accept this. I will avenge my child. I want my treasure back." Meng Tuo roared. Be it Monen or the Formless Book, they were both things that Meng Tuo valued the most. How could he not be angry now that both of them had left his side? The surrounding ultimate void supreme gods were also in an uproar. It was fine if Monen's grandson died, but the Formless Book was a will holy artifact. It must not fall into another's hands. Chapter 16:16, Supreme Will Realm, Meng Tuo. Eternal Immortal Realm. 2. Even the ultimate void race did not have many holy artifacts of this level. Now, they actually fell into the hands of that common people's regal. The ultimate void supreme gods immediately showed signs of arguing again. "Calm down, Monen." The void sovereign's voice was dignified. It once again suppressed the voices of the god spirits. After the gods calmed down, he slowly said, "Your Formless Book did fall into the hands of that common people's regal. But your child, Monen, did not die. Monen didn't die. Meng Tuo was stunned. Then why didn't he respond to my call? Monen almost died once. But later on, he was rebuilt by the common people's regal and saved. As for why he didn't reply to your call, the reason is very simple. He has already become a loyal subordinate of the common people's regal. The Void Emperor said indifferently. No way. Meng Tuo immediately retorted, my child, how can he submit to the common people's regal? Would I lie to you? The Void Emperor said unhappily. Your Majesty, you've misunderstood. Why would I think that? I just find it a little difficult to accept the truth. Meng Tuo hurriedly said in fear. Even though he was a supreme willpower realm expert, he naturally could not compare to the Void Emperor. He did not dare or was unwilling to offend the Void Emperor. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something and shouted, I got it. I heard that the common people's regal is best at bewitching people. Many supreme gods in our ultimate void camp have been bewitched by him with such methods. Monen must have been bewitched to be under the command of the common people's regal because of this method. He had a solemn expression, as if he approved of his speculation. However, what the Void Emperor said next froze him in place. He said, Monen wasn't bewitched by the common people's regal, but because he was afraid of death. I don't believe it. Meng Tuo's face turned red. Why would my child do such a thing? The Void Emperor glanced at Meng Tuo and replayed the scene on the battlefield. When Meng Tuo saw that Monen had been beaten into a supreme god divine spark by Zhou Fight and then begged Zhou Fight to surrender inside the supreme god divine spark, he immediately froze on the spot. When the other supreme gods saw this, they did not dare to speak, afraid that they would anger Meng Tuo. The Void Emperor looked at him indifferently. Speaking of which, this was the first ultimate void race god spirit that was willing to take the initiative to surrender to the common people's regal. When the other ultimate void race god spirits faced the Zhou War, other than being used by Zhou Fight to use the Son of Destiny and the Land of Earth, a minister of the king to instigate insight defection, the rest would fight to the death. But when it came to Monen, it was terrible. The Void Emperor shook his head inwardly. After a long time, Meng Tuo suddenly knelt on the ground and gritted his teeth. Reporting to your Majesty, I know my mistake. Am willing to redeem myself and personally fight. Am willing to kill the common people's regal and snatch back the treasure, the formless book. Am also willing to personally kill Monen, the traitor who humiliated our ultimate void race. You're oversimplifying. The Void Emperor said indifferently, the common people's regal only has the strength of the quasi-supreme will realm. Even if we send our subordinates to deal with him, we can only rely on quasi-supreme will realm experts to deal with him. Otherwise, if I send you, the supreme will similarly send supreme willpower experts to deal with you. If I reinforce another supreme will realm, the other party will also reinforce another supreme will realm. Initially, it was just a battle between the juniors. The outcome would be decided by the juniors. Once an existence at our level interferes, it's very likely to turn into a battle at the supreme will realm. In the end, I, the supreme will, and the Crimson Overlord might even personally participate. When the time comes, even if we want to stop, we might not be able to. Our ultimate void race is not ready to risk our lives to fight the supreme will, them. Am not ready for that either. The Void Emperor said inwardly. Meng Tuo was instantly speechless. The ultimate void race of them was indeed not prepared to start a war with the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos. This was because a portion of their troops were still fighting against the wills of other universes. The battle over there was much more intense than here. Even unmatched will realm existences personally participated. It was unlike the ultimate void battleground where even a quasi-supreme will realm existence rarely appeared. So we're just gonna let it go? Meng Tuo was very indignant. Of course not. The Void Emperor said lightly, in all these years, common people's regal is the first enemy to make us beasts suffer so many losses. If we give up just like that, the enemies of the other universes will only think that we've become weaker. At that time, we'll encounter an even greater danger. In order to prove our strength, the common people's regal must die. I can also agree to let you assassinate the common people's regal. However, you have to pretend. Disguise as a quasi-supreme will realm expert. Only then can we kill the common people's regal and not cause a full-scale war with the supreme will. Disguise? Meng Tuo's expression became troubled. My disguise technique should be easily seen through by the supreme will, right? Your disguise will naturally be easily seen through by the supreme will. But mine won't. The Void Emperor said. Meng Tuo was delighted when he heard that. With His Majesty personally taking action, the common people's regal's life will definitely be easy to capture. I've helped you as much as I can. Meng Tuo. Your junior has already disappointed me once. I hope you won't disappoint me again. Otherwise, you can go to the Yazan battlefield. The Void Emperor said indifferently. When Meng Tuo heard this, he immediately panicked. The Yazan battlefield was an ancient battlefield left behind by a true invincible existence that had reached the fusion of illusionary and reality and above the willpower. That place was extremely dangerous. Even unmatched will realm cultivators could die if they entered. Only by entering with willpower could they live comfortably, but there was also a certain risk. However, even so, there were still many wills that came to that ancient battlefield one after another. Why? This was because it was said that there was a supreme inheritance left behind by Your Excellency's subjugator on the battlefield. Whoever obtained that inheritance might even be able to fuse illusionary and reality, let alone willpower. Apart from that, there were also a large number of inheritances of the Supreme Will realm and the inheritances left behind by some willpower powerhouses. Therefore, many willpower realm existences still went forward to take risks even if they knew that the battlefield of the sub-venerables was extremely dangerous and there were all kinds of ancient traps, mechanisms, and dangerous places. Meng Tuo had been there once but he died. If not for the fact that his descendant had spent more than half of his wealth to invite the Void Emperor to revive him, he would probably still be dead. Hence, after his resurrection, Meng Tuo never went to the battlefield of the Quasi-Zun again. His strength was not strong among all the Supreme Will realm experts to begin with. Now that he had lost the supreme treasure, the formless book, wouldn't he be courting death if he went to the sub-supremacy battlefield under such circumstances? He did not have that much wealth to ask the Void Emperor to revive him again. I'll do it well. I promise it won't fail. Meng Tuo immediately promised. I hope so. The Void Emperor said indifferently. Then, Meng Tuo took his leave. After Meng Tuo left, the Void Emperor's figure gradually disappeared and he arrived at a silver palace. This was his own palace and no outsiders were allowed to enter. The Void Emperor often cultivated and thought here. However, he had not come here to cultivate or think. He took out an incomplete illusory seal and muttered to himself. Illusionary legendary tier sage seal, where are you? If it weren't for you, why would I stand up to those two guys in this crappy place for so long? They probably already guessed that I had other motives. Ugh, eternal immortal realm, when can I reach that level? Chapter 16-17, Heart of Darkness. Heaven Key. 1. At the same time in the Land of Dusk the quasi-supreme will of the Heavenly Blade was fighting more than 10 existences of the illusionist clan in a canyon. This group of illusionist clan members had strange methods and were good at playing with people's hearts. They were also extremely skilled in willpower attacks. However, as a saber expert, the will of the Heavenly Blade Quasi-Supreme Will realm was like a saber that could cut through anything. The last thing they were afraid of was the sinister methods and will attacks of these illusionary race. Therefore, the illusionist clan clearly had the advantage in numbers, but they could not do anything to the supreme will of the Heavenly Blade. After a while, the quasi-supreme will of the Heavenly Blade slashed apart the dozen or so powerhouses of the illusionist clan who were also at the quasi-supreme will realm. Then, he said calmly to them, "Is that all you've got? This is far from enough if you want to kill me." The quasi-supreme willpower realm experts of the illusionary race were furious and cursed. However, the words that they scolded were very powerless because they really could not do anything to the Heavenly Blade Quasi-Supreme Will. The Heavenly Blade Quasi-Supreme Will realm shook their heads expressionlessly when they saw they break through their defenses. "I guess you're not the right people for me to hone my skills with. Then he'll give you a ride." After saying that, he raised the divine knife in his hand and covered half of his face, leaving only half of his cold and heartless face. In the next breath, the divine saber in his hand suddenly emitted an infinite saber beam. Willpower skill, heaven-slaying saber. Swoosh! When the light dissipated, they saw that the dozen or so quasi-supreme will realm illusionist clan members had already fallen to the ground and were no longer breathing. He killed more than 10 quasi-supreme will realm cultivators with a single slash. Seeing this, Heaven Blade nodded. His strength was indeed much higher than before he came to the Land of Dusk. There were many experts in the Land of Dusk. Quasi-supreme will realm experts often appeared. The Supreme Will was right. This was indeed the most suitable place for him to practice his saber. As long as he trained here for a period of time, he had a high chance of advancing to the quasi-supreme will realm. At the thought of this, he couldn't help but think of Zhou Zhou again. "I wonder how the Regal is doing," he thought to himself. He thought about how the full-strength attack he had given the Regal last time had been used up not long after. The sense of urgency in his heart intensified, and he tightened his grip on the saber. No way. He wanted to find stronger opponents to experience life and death. Only then could he advance to the true Supreme Will realm as soon as possible. When the time came, in the ultimate void beyond the myriad worlds, he also had the right to protect Zhou Zhou. Just as he wanted to leave, an existence that emitted an infinite pure white light appeared in front of him. He had a jade-like face and a gentle expression, emitting a great maternal glow. It was the Supreme Will. "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will." Heaven Blade was stunned and immediately said respectfully, the Supreme Will nodded and smiled. "I just saw it. You've made great progress. It's all thanks to your Excellency's nurturing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have improved so much." The Heavenly Blade said sincerely. The Supreme Will not only instructed God King Heaven Punishment to pay attention to him, but also to remember to save him if he encountered danger while he was training here. The Supreme Will would even occasionally personally descend to guide he on his path. The reason why he had improved so much during this period of time was not only because he was considered talented, but also because of the guidance of the Supreme Will. "I'm not the only one who contributed to your great improvement. I saw that the pills given to you by the common people's Regal saved you several times." The Supreme Will laughed. "Yes, His Majesty's pills saved me many times. Without His Majesty's pills to save my life, I'm afraid I would have died somewhere in the Land of Dusk by now." The Heaven Blade said seriously. In order to pursue the path of the saber, he would find a dozen, or even dozens of Supreme Divine level experts or even quasi-Supreme Wills to attack him every time. Such a siege could undoubtedly increase the pressure on him. In the face of a huge life and death crisis, he could seek an opportunity to break through and improve. But you can't walk by the river without getting your shoes wet. Occasionally, Heaven's blade would misjudge the enemy's strength. When he encountered an enemy he couldn't resist, he would be forced into a desperate situation by the enemy. He might even be seriously injured and almost die. If he didn't have those supreme God-level divine medicines given to him by the common people's regal, allowing him to recover time and time again and escape, he wouldn't have the confidence to carry out life and death battles to improve himself. The Supreme Will smiled and said, "I came here today to let you know something." The Heaven Blade was stunned. What was so important that an existence like the Supreme Will would personally come to remind him? "You'll see." The Supreme Will smiled and waved his right hand gently. An illusory projection appeared in front of the Heavenly Blade. Heavenly Blade looked over with great curiosity. Then, he saw Zhou fighting two quasi-supreme willpower experts alone. Among them, Monin belonged to the kind of top quasi-supreme willpower experts who were on par with him. The Heaven Blade was stunned seeing this. How long had it been? His Majesty's strength had already increased to this extent. Then, when he saw Monin take out the formless book and summon the true blood incarnation of a supreme will, he began to worry about Zhou Fight's safety again. And when he saw that Zhou Fight had withstood the other party's attack without suffering any damage, he immediately fell silent. Chapter 16-18, Heart of Darkness. Heaven Key. 2. At this moment, he had already realized. His Majesty's strength had actually already surpassed his own. Then what was the point of working so hard? Don't wait for a while longer. He had yet to become a Supreme Will Realm expert, but His Majesty had already become a Supreme Will Realm expert. Heavenly Blade, do you think you might not be able to catch up to the growth of the common people's regal? The Supreme Will looked at the conflicted and confused expression on the other party's face and asked with a smile. The Heavenly Blade was silent for a moment before nodding. You don't have to worry about that. The Supreme Will said, even though common people's regal's current strength is already a top-notch quasi-supreme will realm existence, there are almost no existences below the supreme will realm that can defeat him. However, his true strength realm is still only that of a grade 1 supreme god. He is still very, very far from the existence of the supreme will realm. As for you, I dare to conclude that you will definitely enter the supreme will realm faster than the common people's regal and can protect him from there. Don't think that he is stronger than you now. Your own efforts won't mean much. He only doesn't have many enemies at the quasi-supreme will realm, but in the supreme will realm, or even in the realm of will transcendence, there are still existences who want him dead. Facing the methods of such an existence, even the common people's regal with many methods can't escape death. And the only way for him to survive is through you. Hearing this, Tianren's divine body trembled. His eyes lit up again, and a sense of urgency rose in his heart. That's right. From the illusory projection, His Majesty was indeed unrivaled in the quasi-supreme will realm. However, it was precisely because of this that enemies at the supreme will realm would begin to target their emperor. And only by advancing to the supreme will realm could he protect His Majesty at that time. I see, my lord. The Supreme Will nodded and said, I'm telling you this news because you're pushing yourself too hard. Advancing to the Supreme Will realm is not something that can be done quickly if you want to pursue speed. Settle down, feel your knife, and think about your path. Sometimes the slowest path may be the fastest. Thank you for your guidance, Your Excellency. This junior understands. Heaven Blade pondered for a moment before saying respectfully. The Supreme Will nodded slightly and disappeared in front of Heaven Blade. Feel my knife, think my way. After the Heavenly Blade saw the Supreme Will leave, its gaze landed on the saber in its hand again as it thought about the Supreme Will's words. After a long time, he suddenly put away the saber and carried it on his back. He turned around and walked towards a distant mountain peak. He wanted to be alone for a while and quietly think about his Tao. At night, Zhou Fight and Lord of 10,000 Evils led the army back. After a day of relentless fighting, they finally broke through the other 7 void mystic realms. At this point, the territories of the Lotus Flame War territories and the Fire Poison War were completely under Zhou Fight's control. There were no longer any hidden dangers. After he and Lord of 10,000 Evils returned to the Demon Lord base planet, Lord of 10,000 Evils held a grand celebration ceremony and gathered all the god spirits on the entire Demon Lord base planet and all the god spirit armies from both sides to participate in this ceremony. The entire ceremony went very smoothly. All the god spirits ate and drank happily. As Zhou Fight chatted and drank with Lord of 10,000 Evils, he also diverted his attention to open his information panel. He looked over. User, Lord of the Blazing Sun, Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army, Ultimate Void Battleground, the second leader of the Supreme Will Camp, Military Merits, 22 million Military Merits Mission Medal, 20 Supreme God Mission Medals. Other rewards, 2 Universal Race Divine Artifacts. Zhou Fight nodded in satisfaction after reading it. Other rewards, 2 Universal Race Divine Artifacts. However, there was no hurry. He could look at the 2 Racial Divine Artifacts rewarded by the mission first. The first Racial Divine Artifact was a heart-shaped Racial Divine Artifact. He was even beating. If one listened closely, they could hear the clear and powerful sound of a beating heart. The second Racial Divine Artifact was a golden key. He looked over. When new subjects are born, there's a 20% chance of awakening light-type talent. It will increase the darkness-type immunity of the subject's stances to reduce 20% darkness-type damage. Race Divine Artifact, Heaven Key, Beginner Grade Race Divine Artifact. A universal race divine artifact that has the ability to open any divine artifact with the characteristic of lock. After the Lord recognizes it as its master, the probability of its subjects comprehending lock-picking techniques when facing an ownerless item increases by 1%. It increases the talent of the subject's shadow law. When a new subject is born, there's a 10% chance of awakening the talent Skillful Hands or Shadow Hiding. After Zhou Fight looked at the 2 Universal Race Divine Artifacts, he could not help but think. The Heart of Darkness was fine. It was the Racial Divine Artifact that he needed the most to increase the immunity of subjects. However, the other general-purpose Racial Divine Artifact, the Key of Heaven, felt strange no matter how he looked at it. His ability to activate any divine artifact with the characteristics of lock was undoubtedly very useful. However, the later abilities were a little misleading. Hands plus Shadow Hiding. Hiss. The thief was overjoyed. Zhou Fight subconsciously did not want it to acknowledge him as its master. However, as the saying goes, one has a sharp blade and killing intent arises. There were some things that one could not think too much about when they did not have them, but once they did, it was easy to think too much. He did not want a group of despicable thieves to be born among his subjects. There were so many racial divine artifacts in the Supreme God Realm Monument. He would not feel regretful about missing out on such a beginner-grade racial divine artifact. However, he quickly thought of something that made he decide to recognize this racial divine artifact as his master. He recalled his racial talent in the peaceful times. Even though the peaceful times was only an extraordinary tier Lord talent, it allowed Zhou's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to prosper and be stable. Politics were clear, the people lived and worked in peace. They were simple, kind, and hard-working. Coupled with the enhancement of the other Lord talents, titles, and racial divine artifacts, the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom might not all be saints, but they were at least good people. This was very unimaginable to the subjects of the other territories. However, with the enhancement of many Lord talents, racial divine artifacts, and titles, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom really did it. Compared to the war and chaos outside, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was definitely worthy of its name as the Peaceful Times. Its reputation had even spread. It was not only the subjects from other places in the high continent that were migrating to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. They wanted to become subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and enjoy the various benefits and peace of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Even the myriad worlds in the universe knew of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's peaceful times. Some superhumans with the ability to move across worlds fought to come to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom on the high continent from other worlds, wanting to become subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. As there were too many living beings who wanted to immigrate, the Immigration and Nationality Management Departments of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom even specially adopted a policy to restrict immigration. They issued an order to prohibit immigration to living beings who had serious criminal experience. Only then did the pressure on immigration ease a little. Fortunately, the territory of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was constantly expanding every day. These new subjects could at least have a place to live, and work. Speaking of which, it was precisely because Zhou Feit believed in the kindness of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's subjects that he decided to recognize this racial divine artifact as its master. Furthermore, he would continue to become stronger in the future and obtain more treasures. He was confident that he could turn the key of heaven into a racial divine artifact that only had benefits and no harm. After that, Zhou Feit chatted with Lord of 10,000 Evils for a while more. Then, he said that he had something on and left alone. He came to the Supreme God Realm Monument. He opened the Supreme God Realm Monument and began to check which race divine artifacts were suitable for him to exchange. Chapter 1619, 4 Race Divine Artifacts. 12 Missions. 1. Zhou Feit opened the Supreme God Realm Monument and opened the Racial Divine Artifact Interface. He directly searched for the exclusive racial divine artifact of the Blazing Sun God race, human race. To advance to a high-level Master God tier kingdom, a lord needed to possess 50 racial divine artifacts of their race. As for the Blazing Sun God race divine artifacts in his hands, he currently only had 45. He still needed 5 more to meet this advancement requirement. It's too slow to look for them one by one. It was better to buy it directly from the Supreme God Realm Monument. As for buying an immunity-type divine artifact, he could put it aside for now. In any case, he was not in a hurry. After observing for a while, he quickly found the purchase target. Racial Divine Artifact, Bronze Galloping Horse, Beginner Grade Racial Artifact, a racial artifact exclusive to the human race. After the Lord places it in the territory, the people under his command will have a certain amount of riding talent, and the territory will be more likely to produce horses with high qualifications and pure bloodlines. When the people ride horse-like pets into the territory of an alien race, the horse's speed is increased by 10%, and when the cavalry charges against the alien race, the lethality is increased by 50%. Military merit required for exchange, 2 million military merits, 3 supreme mission medals, racial artifact, Simya Wuding, beginner grade racial artifact, or racial artifact exclusive to the human race. After the Lord places it in the territory, the copper production in the territory will increase by 20%. The people in the territory will have more respect for women who are mothers without affecting their rationality. The Lord's subjects and people will love the Lord more and abide by the laws of the territory. Military merit required for redemption, 1 million military merit, 2 supreme mission medals, racial divine artifact, along the river during the Qingming festival, beginner grade racial artifact, a racial artifact exclusive to the human race. After the Lord integrates it into the core of the territory will be more likely to attract outside painters to join the territory, greatly increasing the painting talent of the people. At the same time, the people of the territory will love the mountains and rivers of the motherland more. Military merit required for exchange, 3 million military merits, 1 supreme mission medal, racial divine artifact, the Great 9 Cauldrons, advanced grade racial artifact or racial artifact exclusive to the human race. After the Lord places it in the territory, it can suppress the luck of the Lord and the territory forces, so that it will not be lost or stolen. It is less likely to cause rebellion within the territory. When a foreign race invades, the Lord and the territory forces can react faster, while minimizing the losses and counter-attacking the invading foreign races as quickly as possible. When defeating the enemy, there is a 10% chance of obtaining the 9 Cauldrons treasure box, which can contain the Heart of Mist, equipment, materials, talent cards, divine crystals, architectural drawings, pet eggs, military merit required for redemption, 6 million military merit points, 3 Master God Tier quest medals, racial divine artifact, terracotta warrior, intermediate grade race divine artifact, a race-specific divine artifact of the human race. After the Lord places it in the territory can train high-level soldier types, terracotta warrior. The combat ability of the terracotta warrior is extremely comprehensive. Close combat, long-range attack, siege, defense, logistics, construction. All are proficient. Required military merits, 4 million military merits, for supreme mission medals. Zhou Feit looked at the 5 racial divine artifacts he had chosen and nodded in satisfaction. Even though most of them were beginner-grade race divine artifacts, only the Great 9 Cauldrons were high-level race divine artifacts. However, he had only bought it to gather the resources and conditions for the advancement of the Master God Tier Kingdom, so he was naturally not so picky. His gaze landed on the intermediate-grade racial divine artifact, the terracotta warrior. Then, he shook his head regretfully. If it was in the past, he would definitely be overjoyed to obtain this race's divine artifact. High-level soldier types, terracotta soldiers, were not considered weak among the many terracotta soldiers after all. However, he already had the strongest divine weapons under him. Top supreme soldier types like the Supreme Holy Mage God and the Heavenly Soldiers were no longer needed. Then, he opened the conditions to advance to the Master God Tier Kingdom and saw that the racial divine artifact had indeed been satisfied. Now, to me, there are only the 3 most difficult requirements to advance to a high-level Master God Tier Kingdom. Territory level upgraded to Master God Tier Advanced Grade. Conquer the Lord territory of the beginner grade Master God Tier Kingdom under the 3 Crimson Overlords. Conquer the territory of a Lord of a beginner grade Master God Tier Kingdom that is not under the command of the Crimson Overlord. Let's upgrade the territory to the Master God Tier Advanced Grade first. The other 2 can't be forced. We'll just have to take it slow. Zhou Feit thought. Then, he looked at his information panel. User, Lord of the Blazing Sun, Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army, Ultimate Void Battleground, the 2nd leader of the Supreme Will Camp, military merits, 6 million military merits mission medal, 10. 5 Supreme God mission medals. Other rewards, 2 universal race divine artifacts. There are still a lot of military merits and mission medals left. Then I can exchange for a few attribute immunity type divine artifacts. Zhou Feit muttered to himself. Then, he picked it up again. Soon, his eyes lit up. That's it. With a thought from him, the 6 million military credits and 10 Supreme God mission medals instantly disappeared. At this point, the military merits in his hands returned to 0 again, and he only had 0. 5 mission medals left. Just like the last time, it was almost completely spent. At the same time, a white bear doll appeared in his hand. Race Divine Artifact, Holy Bear Demon Puppet, Top Race Divine Artifact. A race divine artifact exclusive to the Light Spirit Bear race. After the Lord places it in the territory, all the subjects under his command will obtain the Strength of the Bear talent. Their personal basic strength will increase by 100 kilograms. After obtaining the Defense of the Bear talent, their personal defense will increase greatly and reduce the physical damage they receive by 20%. After obtaining the Heart of the Holy Bear talent, the talent of the subjects under his command will increase slightly. When they advance to become God spirits with the law of strength as the foundation, the probability of breaking through to become God spirits will increase by 50%. Chapter 1620, For Race Divine Artifacts. 12 Missions. 2. As expected of the racial divine artifact, I spent 6 million military merits and 10 Supreme God mission medals to buy. The effect is top-notch. Zhou Fight sighed. Moreover, as one of the top 5 laws in the Supreme Great Cosmos, there were extremely few racial divine artifacts related to the law of strength. Only a divine object like the Supreme God Realm Monument would have such a top-notch race divine artifact. Otherwise, if he were to search in the myriad worlds, it would probably be very difficult for he to find such a top-notch and rare racial divine artifact no matter how long he spent. With the enhancement of this racial divine artifact of the law of strength, they, and the soldiers under him, would have a huge advantage when facing enemies in the future, especially when facing enemies on the physics side. Then the next step is to transform it into a racial divine artifact of the blazing sun god race. Zhou Fight took out the common people's cauldron and threw the holy bear demon puppet in to receive the modifications of the common people's cauldron. Soon, Zhou Fight felt that 5% of his luck had been stripped out of his total luck and fused into the common people's cauldron. It turned into firewood for the common people's cauldron and began to modify the holy bear demon puppet. He could not help but click his tongue as he felt the loss of his luck. The conversion requirement of providence was really high. Then, he stopped thinking and began to wait. A moment later. Boom! A low and muffled sound sounded, and the entire common people's cauldron shook slightly. Then, the lid of the common people's cauldron suddenly opened automatically. A silver stream of light flew out and headed straight for Zhou Fight before stopping in front of him. At the same time, Zhou Fight also felt it. About 15% of the power of providence flew out from its surface and fused into his providence. Zhou Fight could not help but exclaim. He had only consumed 5% of his providence, but the providence it provided was more than 15%. His luck increased by 10%. This majestic marionette was indeed worthy of being a top-notch race divine artifact that he valued. The providence it gave back was just too much. Then, he looked at the modified racial divine artifact. At that moment, his appearance had already changed drastically. From a white bear doll, he had turned into an ancient chaos-colored axe. He looked over and information about the racial divine artifact appeared. Race divine artifact, heaven-splitting sacred axe, top race divine artifact, a race divine artifact exclusive to the blazing sun god race. It originates from the myths and legends of the blazing sun god race's ancient god spirit, Pangu, who created the world. Under the condensation of the faith of heaven splitting, it is a top-notch race divine artifact. After the Lord placed it in the territory, all the subjects under him obtained the power of heaven splitting talent. Their personal basic strength increased by plus 1,000 kilograms. After obtaining the blessing of heaven splitting, their personal defensive ability increased greatly, reducing the 30% physical damage they received. The talent of the law of strength increased slightly. When using the law of strength as the foundation, the probability of breaking through increased by 80% when advancing to a god spirit. When advancing to a true god tier, the probability of breaking through increased by 50%. When advancing to a master god, the probability of breaking through increased by 10%. After reading it, Zhou Fight gasped. What a top-notch racial divine artifact. It was far stronger than the 5-element stars that he had exchanged for previously. This transformation was a huge gain. Then, he looked at the name of this racial divine artifact and couldn't help but smile. Heaven-splitting sacred axe. It was only one word different from Pangu's heaven-opening axe. As for Pangus' heaven-opening axe, it was a companion divine artifact that had been born with he since he was born. It could grow with his strength. Under the nurturing of a large number of resources from the blazing sun divine kingdom, Pangu had long reached the limit of an advanced grade master god tier. He was only a step away from becoming a supreme god. Zhou Fight had once met he in private. If nothing went wrong, the other party should be able to advance to the supreme god level in 2 days. I wonder if Pangu knows about the existence of this heaven-splitting sacred axe. This thought flashed through Zhou Fight's mind. However, he didn't ask. In any case, the heaven-splitting sacred axe was already in his hands. There was no point in asking. He only knew a dispensable answer. Putting away the heaven-splitting sacred axe, he closed the racial divine artifact interface and opened the mission interface. After careful selection, he chose a total of 12 missions and accepted them all. They were, Conquer Grade 3 Supreme God Realm War Territory, Ancient God Main City, Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the Ancient God War Territory, Conquer Grade 2 Supreme God Level War Territory, Crystal Main City, Grade 2 Supreme God Level Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the Crystal War Territory, Conquer a Grade 1 Supreme God Level War Territory, 9 Dragon Main City, Grade 1 Supreme God Level Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the 9 Dragons War Territory, Conquer a Grade 1 Supreme God Level War Territory, Purple Cloud Main City, Grade 1 Supreme God Level Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the Purple Cloud War Territory, Conquer Grade 1 Supreme God Level War Territory, Wind Bird Main City, Grade 1 Supreme God Level Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the Wind Bird War Territory. Conquer Grade 1 Supreme God Level War Territory, Whirlpool Main City, Grade 1 Supreme God Level Mission, Attack the Void Mystic Realm, Exclusive Mission of the Whirlpool War Territory. Zhou Fight looked at the 12 war missions and nodded slightly. As long as he completed all these missions, 14 of the 15 war territories in the Ultimate Void battlefield would return to the Supreme Will's camp. At that time, as long as they eliminated the Ultimate Void Sanctuary where the Void Emperor's avatar was stationed, they could completely chase the Ultimate Void race out of the Ultimate Void battlefield. This way, the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos would no longer be disturbed by the Ultimate Void battlefield. When the time comes, the Supreme Will, the decisive battle between the Crimson Overlord and the Void Emperor is coming, right? However, that should have nothing to do with me. Zhou Fight thought. In a decisive battle of that level, even a few true Supreme Will Realm experts would probably die. At the Quasi-Supreme Will Realm, they were no different from cannon fodder. My strength is far from enough to participate in that war. At that time, as long as the Supreme Will did not ask him to go, he would definitely not get involved. His life is the most important thing. At the same time, in the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, Zhou was sitting cross-legged on the Tao Comprehension futon and cultivating. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the holy scripture of the heart floating in front of him, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. As expected of a will holy artifact. I feel that after cultivating in the time world for another night, my willpower will reach the advanced stage will divine transformation realm. When the time comes, I'm only a step away from the willpower level of the Supreme Will realm. He muttered to himself. At that time, he would raise his cultivation realm to the quasi-Supreme Will realm and could seek a breakthrough and advance to the Supreme Will realm. Then, he thought of the Supreme Will realm true blood avatar he had encountered on the Ultimate Void battlefield today. He muttered to himself, even though my strength has improved very quickly, my enemies are improving fast, too. The enemy Zhou Fight encountered this time was the true blood incarnation of the Supreme Will realm. The next time might be the true Supreme Will realm. I can't slack off. We have to keep trying. Only by reaching the Supreme Willpower Realm and possessing Supreme Willpower techniques, then possessing the Supreme Willpower Realm, Heavenly Fate Di Huang, and creating a large number of Supreme Willpower Realm treasures or even will holy artifacts through Heavenly Fate Di Huang, can I truly have the ability to protect myself. At that time, even if I face the willpower, I should be able to protect myself with a large number of Supreme Willpower resources. Zhou Zhou thought. Along the way, he had relied on the suppression of resources to defeat the enemy. Even if it was an enemy of a higher level, he could still win with the advantage of overwhelming resources. If he couldn't win, at least it wouldn't be a problem for him to protect him. This was the reason why he had the confidence to protect himself in the Supreme Will Realm. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to advance to the Supreme Will Realm first. He felt a sense of urgency at the thought of this. Chapter 1621, Zhou Zhou's Worry. War Summary. 1. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath to ease the sense of urgency in his heart. One step at a time. Take your time. There's no point in being anxious. He didn't think too much about it and turned on his personal terminal. As expected, he saw that Zero had already sent him the summary of today's battle. Zhou Zhou looked over. Under the combined efforts of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom Army and the army on the Ultimate Void battlefield, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had eliminated a total of 183 beginner-level Divine Kingdom Lord factions, 111 intermediate-grade Divine Kingdom Lord factions, 65 advanced-grade Divine Kingdom Lord factions, and 18 Overlord-level Lord factions. Coupled with the enemies that Zhou Fight and Lord of 10,000 Evils had eliminated in the 8 Void Mystic Realms, as well as Monin and Sheila's Ultimate Void Army, they had eliminated more than 4,000 enemies from the people of foreign races in the capital units, more than 200 billion God spirits, more than 50 billion true God tiers, nearly 500,000 master God tiers of the people of foreign races, and a total of 315 supreme gods of the people of foreign races. After collating the statistics, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had obtained a total of about 1 Gai unit mist core of various levels, origin crystals, skill books, equipment, and basic materials. 10 capital units 2,389,190,419,733,892 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 81,344,197 legendary tier and below Lord Talent spheres. 812 units of Chaos Divine Treasure. A large number of Lord Talent crystal fragments of other levels. There were also 1 Gai unit 12,892,389,892,140 million units of divine crystals from low-tier deity level to high-tier deity level. 2,523,918,121,521 true God tier divine crystals. 2,191,231,908,943 master God tier divine crystals. 223,122,387 grade 1 to grade 3 supreme God divine crystals. 40 capital units had 1,237,347,218 million divine artifacts from lesser gods to high-tier deity level. 6,112,836 million true God-tier divine artifacts. 52,312,904 master God-tier divine artifacts. 302,384 supreme God divine artifacts. There were about 20 capital units 2,389 trillion divine spark fragments, God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 1,0238,912,893,281 master God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 39,722,834 supreme God-level God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. In terms of insight defection, Zhou Fight was outside the White Dawn Void Mystic realm today. Through the land of Earth, the A Minister of the King had insight defection a total of 51,223,108,371 Ultimate Void God Spirits, 5,181,037,123 Ultimate Void True God Tiers, 31,931 Ultimate Void Master God Tiers, and 12 Ultimate Void Supreme Gods. In addition, there was also the Surrendered Monin. Then, in the process of conquering the Void Mystic Realm, through the Son of Destiny, the insight defection reached 10,232,413,467 Ordinary God Spirits, 329,828,713 True God Tiers, 3,123 Master Gods, and 2 Supreme Gods. In addition, the Lords of the Star Alliance had also instigated 555 capital unit soldiers, more than 511 billion God Spirits, more than 1 million True God Tiers, and 312 Supremacy Gods. In the end, in terms of the advancement of God Spirits, after the consecutive battles today, although the God Spirits under Zhou were extremely tired, their gains were also extremely shocking. After the consecutive battles today, although the God Spirits under Zhou were extremely tired, their gains were also extremely shocking. In terms of advancement, just the newly advanced Ordinary God Spirits had 10,428,237 million Legendary Tier Advanced Grade Soldiers promoted to Low-Tier Deity Level Elementary Grade God Spirits. There were also 2,193,278 high-tier deity-level advanced grade God Spirits who had advanced to true God-tier elementary grade God Spirits. Another 3,761 top-notch true gods of the human race and 8,673 top-notch true gods of the people of foreign races felt their Master God-tier bottleneck and applied to enter the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to cultivate in seclusion to try to break through to the Master God-tier realm. If nothing went wrong, he would officially break through tomorrow. Zhou's original military strength was 1 Guy Unit 455 Capital Units 823,372,313,271 soldiers, 8,324,801,811 God Spirits. 1,800,043,058,325 True Gods, 47,616 Master Gods, and 33 Supreme Gods. Now, with the addition of these divine spirit experts who had instigated the insight defection and the 5 Supreme Gods and 15 Master Gods recruited from the chaotic mystic realm, the military strength under him had reached 1 Guy Unit 1010 Capital Units 731, 283, 1272, 978 soldiers. 248,573,699,994 God Spirits, 7,357,117,439 True God Tier, 82,997 Master Gods, and 53 Supreme Gods. Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. The improvement today was especially huge. Especially in terms of ordinary God Spirits and True God Tier, the number had increased by 4 times. The number of Supreme Gods had also increased to as many as 53. With so many Supreme Gods around, Zhou Fight would be even more confident when he went out. Such troops could easily dominate a region in the myriad worlds. Now, other than him being inferior to Lord of 10,000 Evils in terms of trump cards in the realm of supreme will, he had definitely surpassed Lord of 10,000 Evils in all aspects, be it in terms of military strength, the number of God Spirits, or equipment and divine artifacts. After I take down those 10 war territories, my Supreme Lord Reserve Army position will also surpass Lord of 10,000 Evils and become the 3rd Reserve Army. The flames of ambition burned in Zhou's heart. 10 war territories sounded like a lot. However, this was not the first time Zhou had come to the Ultimate Void battlefield. With his current military strength in the Ultimate Void battlefield, he was confident that he could take down all the war territories in 5 days at most. In addition, in this war summary, he was even happier when he saw the 812 units of Chaos Divine Treasure. Without exception, these Chaos Divine Treasures were obtained from the White Dawn Void Mystic Realm and the other 8 Void Mystic Realms. Every Void Mystic Realm could bring about 50 to 150 units of Chaos Divine Treasures. This Void Mystic Realm is really a good place to obtain a Chaos Divine Treasure. It's a pity that no one in the Void Mystic Realm is conquered. Otherwise, I'd have a new and stable source of Chaos Treasures. Chapter 1622, Zhou Zhou's Worry. War Summary. 2. Zhou Zhou lamented. Right at that moment, another message was sent to Zhou Zhou's personal terminal. He looked over and realized that it was sent by his main avatar, Zhou Manage. The content of the message was about the high-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction in the Chaos Sea purchasing a Chaos Divine Treasure. Currently, there were a total of 55 high-level Divine Kingdom Lord factions that had come to the Chaos Sea to collect Chaos Divine Treasures. After 2 days of thought and conversation, 11 high-level Divine Kingdom Lord factions were willing to exchange for the Chaos Divine Treasures they had obtained from the ruins of time. And what they wanted was surprisingly the same. It was either a divine artifact or a treasure that could assist in advancing to the God Spirit realm. Zhou Zhou was not surprised after reading it. To the Divine Kingdom Lord factions that yearned for God spirits, true God tiers, master God tiers, and even supreme gods, they valued these 2 types of benefits the most. Most of the rest were not very important. And the rich and imposing Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom naturally agreed readily to their request. After a series of negotiations, they obtained a total of 220 units of Chaos Divine Treasures from the hands of 11 high-level Divine Kingdom Lord factions. Every high-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction would only trade 20 units. Zhou Zhou guessed that they had secretly discussed the situation of the same transaction amount. However, he did not care about this. It was fine as long as he was willing to trade. As for the number of transactions, he didn't care. In any case, it was a long-term matter. If he were to be a little tough because he wanted more, causing they to destroy the trade relationship between they and reduce the benefits of they, that would not be what he wanted to see. In that case, now I have 1,256 units of Chaos Divine Treasures. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. He had spent a total of 1,000 units of the Chaos Divine Treasure that Zhou Marshal had sent over earlier in the day to upgrade his territory, leaving him with only 224 units of the Chaos Divine Treasure. It was just night time and he once again had 1,256 units of Chaos Divine Treasures. At this rate, it won't be long before I can upgrade my territory to the territory of Master God Tier Advanced Grade. Then, I can upgrade the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to a high-level Master God Tier Kingdom. Zhou Zhou thought. The speed at which the Chaos Divine Treasures were collected was much faster than he had imagined. He had originally estimated that it would take 10 days. Now, I feel like I can gather it in about 5 days. Right at that moment, a female figure emitting boundless pure white light appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he hurriedly stood up and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will. I came here to tell you something. The Crimson Overlord has already given the order for all the Scarlet factions to retreat from the Ultimate Void battlefield. They've all retreated. From now on, the Ultimate Void battlefield will belong to us completely. The Crimson Overlord will also not interfere in the Ultimate Void battlefield from today onwards." The Supreme Will went straight to the point. Zhou Zhou was naturally very surprised. He did not expect the Crimson Overlord to give up on the Ultimate Void battlefield. Even though the Ultimate Void battleground was a battlefield, it was also a treasure land that hid treasures everywhere because it could collect and intercept ownerless treasures that passed by in the ultimate void environment. Giving up on the ultimate void battleground could be said to have lost a resource point for nothing. However, after thinking about it, he felt that it was very reasonable. Becky, who was stationed in the ultimate void battlefield, had been beaten to death by him after all. Even though he had also been punished in the end and almost lost a holy artifact, Becky, as the former Supreme Scarlet Reserve Army, had lost to him, the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. It was not only he who had lost face, but also the Crimson Overlord behind him. After the Crimson Overlord punished Zhou, it could no longer attack a junior like Zhou. Otherwise, if word got out, it would only make the other god spirits and even the Supreme Will Realm think that it was petty. You're a mighty willpower cultivator. Why are you staring at a grade 1 Supreme God Junior who doesn't even have a Supreme Willpower Realm and not letting go? Since it was so awkward to stay, he might as well leave. Just as Zhou was thinking about these things. The Supreme Will looked at Zhou's thoughtful expression and was even more satisfied with his successor. Calm in the face of danger, calm in the face of change, calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Even in the face of the cold attitude of the Crimson Overlord, Zhou was clearly not afraid. He had clearly understood the crux of the matter. The Supreme Will liked Zhou's brave and resourceful attitude and performance. The ultimate void battleground will be ours from now on. Hurry up and strive to unify the entire ultimate void battleground as soon as possible. When the time comes, you'll be rewarded. The Supreme Will smiled. Lord Supreme Will, you trust me too much. I'm just a grade 1 Supreme God. Zhou complained. The Supreme Will was speechless. What grade 1 Supreme God could be like you? Not only could he fight and kill 2 quasi-supreme willpower realm experts alone, but even the true blood incarnation of the supreme willpower realm could not kill you. He didn't say anything else. His figure gradually faded, and it was obvious that he was about to leave. When Zhou saw this, he stopped talking nonsense and hurriedly said, Lord Supreme Will, I killed 2 quasi-supreme willpower realm subordinates under the Void Emperor and even snatched their willpower holy artifact. The Void Emperor might send stronger enemies or even supreme willpower realm experts to deal with me. Lord Supreme Will, you can't abandon me. He wouldn't dare. The Supreme Will said calmly. What if? Zhou hurriedly said. This concerned his life. He didn't dare touch this one in 10,000 chances. The reason why he could escape the calamity of the Supreme Will Realm's true blood avatar during the day was because he had relied on the ability of blood rebirth to revive, not because he was avoiding it without any injuries. How could he have that ability? If he could really easily dodge without being injured, the other party was not worthy of being called the true blood avatar of the Supreme Will Realm. As for why the other party couldn't kill him with a single strike and didn't implicate the main body, this was because Zhou had too much luck. Because the providence was too great, under the protection of the huge providence, the Supreme Will Realm True Blood Avatar could not destroy the main body with a single strike. Since his main body was not dead, Zhou Fight naturally would not really die. Therefore, after Zhou Fight's main body was destroyed, he relied on a drop of blood that he had prepared beforehand to be reborn. He then quickly rushed to the battlefield, creating the illusion that he was alive without any injuries. And after this battle, he also knew how terrifying the existence of the Supreme Will Realm was. The true blood incarnation formed from just a drop of blood was already so terrifying. In front of the other party, he could not retaliate at all. How terrifying was the Supreme Will Realm at the peak of the complete form. Zhou could not imagine it. And when he thought about how the Void Emperor knew that he had monopolized 2 quasi-supreme willpower realms, and that the enemies he would send next were very likely to be true supreme willpower realms, he had always been very worried. That was why he was so persistent in telling the Supreme Will about this. After hearing Zhou Fight's words, the Supreme Will did not say anything and disappeared into the pure white light. Seeing this, Zhou started thinking. The Supreme Will didn't answer him. Could it be because he had already prepared protective measures for him? That's how it should be. There's no way the Supreme Will can't think of what I can think of. Zhou thought. However, this was only his guess. If the Supreme Will was really unprepared, it would be over once he encountered danger. Only the Supreme Will realm can deal with the Supreme Will realm. I have to prepare some Supreme Will level self-preservation methods myself. Zhou thought. He thought of the two will holy artifacts he currently had. The Holy Scripture of the Heart gave up. Even though this will holy artifact was good, it was still a pure supplementary will holy artifact. It had no offensive ability or ability to protect itself. As for the formless book that he had just obtained. When Zhou thought of this, he saw a blood-colored book appear in front of him. It was the will holy artifact, formless book. Chapter 1623, Supreme Sacred Body and Eternal Immortal Realm. 1. Divine Artifact Name, Formless Book, Divine Artifact Grade, Will Holy Artifact, Low Level, Divine Artifact Law, Formless Summoning. Using the true blood of an expert as a summoning material, it can summon the true blood avatar of an expert. The true blood avatar has between 1/10,000 of the original Bodhi's strength. It can summon the true blood avatar of the Supreme Will realm at the highest. At the same time, the formless book could summon up to 10 true blood avatars. After consuming the power contained in the true blood left behind by the experts, the true blood avatar would also disappear. The true blood stored in the formless book would also disappear at the same time. It needed to replenish the true blood of the experts before it could be summoned again. Prompt 1. If a powerhouse who is not quasi-supreme will realm wants to forcefully use a will holy artifact, they need to consume a large amount of supreme god divine power and willpower to use it. Prompt 2, will recognize you as its master. Minimum will requirement, will divine transformation realm. Prompt 3, current number of true blood sealed in the formless book, 3/471/10000. Zhou Fight looked at the attributes of the formless book and nodded, but then, he felt a headache. The formless book was useful, but where could he find the true blood of a supreme willpower realm expert? Even if he could find a supreme willpower realm expert, how could he convince the other party to give him his true blood? Don't think that the true blood of supreme will realm experts was endless. There was also a limited amount of true blood in the body of a supreme will realm cultivator, and it was very difficult to recover. In addition, for safety reasons, most supreme willpower realm experts were unwilling to casually give their true blood to others. Just as he was fretting, an existence emitting the light of the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared in front of Zhou. It was the reincarnation will, soul heaven. Zhou looked at the other party's figure and could not help but be stunned. He thought to himself, the heavens are really taking good care of me. I was worried about where I got the true blood of the supreme will realm, so they directly sent it to me. That's right. Why didn't I think of looking for Brother Reincarnation just now? With his relationship with Brother Reincarnation, it was not a problem for him to want a drop of supreme will realm true blood, right? Zhou thought. Why are you looking at me like that? The Reincarnation will originally wanted to talk about himself, but when he saw his brother staring at him, he could not help but ask curiously. Nothing. Nothing. Zhou shook his head and asked, Brother, you suddenly came to visit. There should be something, right? Can't I come if it's nothing? The Reincarnation will chuckled. Brother, what are you saying? Zhou hurriedly said, my family is your family. No matter when you come, it's fine. I don't think so. The reincarnation will waved his hand and said, forget it, I won't joke with you anymore. I came here this time to tell you something. The inheritance ground of the Yellow River will open in 3 days. The land of inheritance of the Yellow Rivers is about to open. Zhou Zhou's body trembled when he heard this. Then, he sighed. It's finally about to open. The reincarnation will nodded and said, let me ask you again. Do you still want to go there and obtain the inheritance of the Yellow Rivers will? Of course. Zhou Zhou smiled and said, if it was in the past, I might have been a little more cowardly. But now, I feel that there shouldn't be anything that can stop me in the land of inheritance of the Yellow Rivers will. Even though he was only a grade 1 supreme god now, his combat strength could be said to be the top existence below the supreme will realm. The inheritance ground of the Yellow Rivers will could only allow supreme gods to enter at most. If the current him entered the inheritance ground of the Yellow Rivers will, if nothing unexpected happened, it would be no different from opening the invincible realm. If that was the case, why not go? The reincarnation will laughed at these domineering words. However, he wasn't smiling mockingly. Instead, he was smiling with amusement and emotion. Who would have thought? A few days ago, when he had just mentioned to him about snatching the inheritance of the Yellow River, although he had agreed on the surface, he was actually very cowardly and hesitant deep down. At that time, Zhou Zhou thought that he could not tell. However, in fact, the reincarnation will had long seen that Zhou Zhou had the intention to retreat, but it was different now. He could tell that Zhou Zhou really had the courage now. He was even extremely confident that he would dare to venture into the Yellow River's land of inheritance. Not bad, in that case, the inheritance of his good friend, Yellow River's will, might really have a good ending and not fall into the hands of the enemy. The reincarnation will thought. Thinking of the death of the Yellow River's will, he could not help but feel sad. If he was still alive and saw that he had grown into the reincarnation will that controlled the netherworld and reincarnation, he would definitely be very happy, right? After Zhou Zhou returned to his senses, he saw the dim expression in the reincarnation will's eyes. When he saw this, he suddenly said, brother. I've actually seen Lord Yellow River's will a few times. The reincarnation will didn't react at first. When he reacted, he immediately grabbed Zhou Zhou's arm excitedly and said, how is that possible? You've seen the Yellow River's will. Where is him? How's his condition? Isn't he not dead? How is he still alive? No, that's not important. Hurry up and let me go. I want to see him, too. You're hurting me, brother. Zhou Zhou grimaced as he looked at the other party's hands that were grabbing his arms tightly. Look, I knew that he was in a hurry. Oh, I'm sorry. I am in such a hurry. Upon hearing this, reincarnation will also realize that he had overreacted. He retracted his hands and even massaged his arms. Chapter 1624, Supreme Sacred Body and Eternal Immortal Realm. 2. Then, he couldn't help but ask, where is the will of the Yellow River? Tell me the place directly, and I'll go straight to him. Zhou Zhou looked at the eager and expectant reincarnation will with a complicated expression and sighed softly in his heart. Was he so deeply in love with Yellow River's will that he didn't even dare to doubt it and directly asked where Yellow River's will was? His attitude made Zhou Zhou unwilling to tell him the truth because he felt that it was a little cruel. The time ruins was only a time ruins after all. Those who were already dead did not return in the end. However, looking at the firm gaze of the reincarnation will, he knew that he had no choice but to say it even if he didn't want to. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to leave. Brother. Zhou Zhou said, I didn't see the will of Yellow River in the real world, but that your excellency I saw in the time ruins. The reincarnation will was stunned. Time ruins, his expression immediately turned a little bitter as he said bitterly, where's the time ruins? Zhou Zhou directly told him the location. After the reincarnation will knew the location, it suddenly stood up and disappeared. Thank you, little brother. His voice echoed in the reincarnation sacred palace. Zhou Zhou was about to sigh when he suddenly came back to his senses. F***ck. No, isn't this too sudden? I haven't asked for true blood yet. Give me your true blood before you leave. Unfortunately, no one responded. Zhou Zhou was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he would have told the other party about the true blood before telling him about the Yellow River's will. Great, it didn't take long for the other party to come back. If the reincarnation will did not return before he encountered an enemy at the Supreme Will realm, he would be in danger. As for the fact that the other party could not enter the time ruins, Zhou Zhou had never thought about it. As a Supreme Will realm expert, especially a top-notch Supreme Will realm expert who controlled the netherworld like the reincarnation will, it was simply too easy for he to enter a time ruin that had an owner. Never mind. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. At most, I'll beg the Supreme Will. I don't believe that the Supreme Will won't give me a trump card that can protect me in front of the Supreme Will realm. No matter what, I'm the youngest Supreme Lord Reserve Army. There have to be some benefits, right? Zhou Zhou muttered in his heart. Right at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared beside Zhou Zhou. He looked a little anxious, but after hearing Zhou Zhou's muttering, he could not help but be stunned. It was the reincarnation will that had returned. My good brother. What happened? Why do you need a trump card that can protect you from the Supreme Will realm? The reincarnation will asked with a solemn expression. He never expected that he would hear such important news on his return. There was actually an enemy at the Supreme Will realm who wanted to attack him, who was only a grade 1 Supreme God. Who was so invincible. He didn't even care about his face as a top expert. Zhou Zhou did not expect his brother to return in the blink of an eye and even hear his muttering. Even though he did not know the reason for his brother's return, since he had already asked, Zhou Zhou took the opportunity to tell the reincarnation will what had happened on the Ultimate Void battlefield today, including the fact that he had monopolized 2 quasi-supreme willpower realm experts and forcefully withstood the full-strength attack of the true blood avatar of the supreme willpower realm. The reincarnation will was shocked. He knew that this brother of his had received a lot of training in the Ultimate Void battlefield, and his strength had also increased a lot. The best proof was that he had smoothly advanced from a Master God tier to a Grade 1 Supreme God. However, he never expected that his brother's growth speed would far exceed his imagination. Even though he was only a Grade 1 Supreme God, his true combat strength had already reached the level of a top quasi-supreme will. Even the full-strength attack of the true blood avatar of the Supreme Will realm could not do anything to him. Even though it was only a true blood avatar at the Supreme Will realm, the reincarnation will was also a Supreme Willpower realm expert. He naturally knew that to a Supreme Willpower realm expert, even if it was only his true blood avatar, it was not something ordinary quasi-supreme willpower realm experts could resist. However, his brother was actually able to block it. It was unbelievable just thinking about it. He immediately asked for the exact details of the situation. When Zhou Zhou heard this, he did not hide anything. The reincarnation will observed Zhou Zhou a few times and clicked his tongue in wonder, your luck is too great. With such luck protecting him, it's almost equivalent to being impervious to all evil. No wonder that guy didn't implicate you by killing your clone. But you and your clone should have some top-notch divine body, right? Otherwise, no matter how great your luck is, you won't be able to withstand the benefits of that huge luck if you don't have enough divine body foundation. Zhou did not expect this to happen. The reason why he could withstand the full-strength attack of the true blood avatar and not die was actually because of his constitution. He thought for a moment and said, I have many types of divine bodies, but if it's a top-notch divine body, it should be the Supreme Sacred Body. Supreme Sacred Body. Lord Supreme will actually give you his cultivation technique. The reincarnation will's eyes widened. Yeah. Zhou smiled. The reincarnation will looked at Zhou's expression with a strange expression. Brother. Why do you look so weird? Zhou asked doubtfully. Brother. Reincarnation will deliberated over his words before saying with a complicated tone, do you know that the 4 Supreme Lord Reserve Army are fighting for the position of Supreme Lord? Then do you know what other specific benefits there are other than the position of the Supreme Will's successor? I don't know. Zhou thought for a moment and could not help but be stunned. This was because he realized that he really did not know what the position of Supreme Lord meant other than being the successor of the Supreme Will. You really don't know. When the reincarnation will saw Zhou's reaction, it could not help but take a deep breath. He said slowly, the position of the Supreme Lord not only represents the position of the successor of the Supreme Will, but also represents an inheritance. An eternal immortal realm inheritance. Eternal immortal realm? Zhou was at a loss. He searched through all the bloodline inheritances in his mind, but he could not find a description of this realm. What's that? Is it a realm title in other alternate universes? The eternal immortal realm is the cultivation realm above the willpower realm. An existence at the legendary tier level has already achieved the fusion of illusionary and reality. He's truly an invincible existence. No existence is a match for an eternal immortal realm expert. Unless the other party is also at the eternal immortal realm. Simply put, the eternal immortal realm is the end of our cultivation path. The reincarnation will knew from Zhou's expression that he did not understand the eternal immortal realm, so it immediately explained to him. The eternal immortal realm is actually the end of the cultivation path. And the inheritance of the Supreme Lord is actually an inheritance of the eternal immortal realm? Zhou was completely stunned. He never dreamed that there would be such a huge background behind this Supreme Lord position. Wait. He suddenly realized something and looked at the reincarnation will. Brother. Are you saying, reincarnation will nodded? You guessed right. The Supreme Sacred Body is a part of the eternal immortal realm inheritance. The upper limit of the Supreme Sacred Body you cultivate is not the Supreme Will realm, nor is it the Will realm. Instead, it's a portion of the invincible ultimate void and the eternal immortal realm inheritance of the billions of great cosmos. He looked at Zhou enviously. I guess that the Supreme Will might favor you because of your achievements. In the future, he might even let you inherit his position and become the next Supreme Will. But I didn't expect it. You're only the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army now, and the Supreme Will is actually willing to give you a portion of the Supreme Lord's inheritance. God King Heaven Punishment, the Spring and Autumn Dharma Lord and Lord of 10,000 Evils don't have such treatment. Good brother. Work hard in the future. With the high regard of the Supreme Will, as long as you don't slack off midway, the position of the future Supreme Lord and our Supreme Great Cosmos will most likely be yours. I'm sure of it. Chapter 1625, Death Token. The reincarnation will was very emotional and amazed. He was not even in a hurry to go to the time ruins. It could be seen how shocked he was by Zhou's cultivation of the Supreme Sacred Body. Zhou was still very confused. He never expected this. He had originally thought that the supreme sacred body he cultivated was a cultivation technique cultivated by the supreme will. This background was already very powerful. He did not expect its true appearance to actually be a portion of the eternal immortal realm inheritance that represented the end of the cultivation path. Even if it was only a portion, it was enough to make countless supreme will realm experts and even willpower experts go crazy. Yes, the supreme will was a strong willpower expert to begin with. An existence like he was cultivating a cultivation technique. If it was not an eternal immortal realm cultivation technique, what else could it be? It was laughable that he had not reacted at that time and only guessed that the highest possibility of this supreme sacred body was the willpower technique. My horizons have limited my imagination. Zhou sighed and was excited. He actually had the eternal immortal realm inheritance. This time, it was not only the supreme will realm and the will realm. Even if it was the eternal immortal realm, he would have inheritances to explore and advance in the future. Not bad, not bad. The supreme will is really good to me. I will definitely repay you well in the future. How many eternal immortal realm inheritances are there in the supreme great cosmos, no, the ultimate void? Zhou thought of this question and asked curiously. How many are there? The reincarnation will was speechless. Don't tell me you think there are many inheritances in the eternal immortal realm? I'll tell you. As far as I know, in the supreme great cosmos and the crimson great cosmos, there's only this eternal immortal realm inheritance in the hands of the supreme will. Not even the crimson overlord. As for the ultimate void outside the great cosmos and the other great cosmos worlds in the ultimate void, the number of eternal immortal realm inheritances that they possess will not exceed one hand at most. The reincarnation will said. This information was only known to he after he became the reincarnation will. If he was still regal soul heaven, it was impossible for he to come into contact with such information. He also said. Moreover, most of these eternal immortal realm inheritances are ownerless. For example, the inheritance of the quasi-supreme in the battlefield of quasi-supreme. For example, the mystic due inheritance of dreamland. There's also the mysterious eternal immortal realm inheritance in the unknown world. They have no master until now. Why is it ownerless? That's because it's too difficult and dangerous to obtain top powerhouses like them. Forget about the Supreme Will realm. Even experts like the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord have the risk of dying if they enter. Zhou was shocked. Those places were actually so dangerous. Even a top-notch expert like the Supreme Will was in danger. The ultimate void was really a world filled with opportunities, but it was also filled with horror and danger. Then where did the inheritance of the Supreme Will come from? Zhou asked curiously. No one knows. No one dares to ask. The reincarnation will shook his head slowly, but then he thought for a moment and said, however, there's a rumor among us Supreme Willpower realm experts that the eternal immortal realm inheritance of the Supreme Will is very likely to come from the illusionary world. The reason why the illusionary world wants to attack our supreme great cosmos and the crimson great cosmos is probably not only to plunder the truth of our world and strengthen the illusionary world where they are, but also to take back the eternal immortal realm inheritance in the hands of the Supreme Will. Of course, it's just a guess. Don't tell anyone. The reincarnation will said cautiously. Zhou nodded in understanding. This concerned the secrets of top powerhouses at the level of the Supreme Will after all. He was not stupid, so he naturally would not spout nonsense. Let's get back to business. Since you're facing the threat of a Supreme Will realm existence, the reincarnation will thought for a moment before taking out a black token that emitted the aura of the netherworld and handing it to Zhou. What's this? Zhou looked at the token in his hand curiously. There was a sealed ghost god gate engraved on the front of this token, and the words, Netherworld, were written on the back in nomological patterns. This is the Netherworld token. It's the token that opens the door to the Netherworld. At the same time, it's also my identity certificate. With this token, if you encounter an enemy you can't resist when you're outside, take it out for the other party to see. As long as the other party is in existence with a little knowledge, even if the other party is in the Supreme Will realm, they have to give you some face. If it's an enemy, it'll be even simpler. Recognize this token as your master. When you encounter danger, immediately activate the willpower contained in the token. At that time, the token will open the door to the Netherworld. I will immediately appear from the door to save you. As long as the other party is not a willpower expert, I'm confident in saving you. If the other party is a willpower expert, I can help you hold him off for a few breaths. At that time, you can directly go to the Netherworld through this door of the Netherworld and summon the Supreme Will to save me. The reincarnation will smiled and said, "Is it actually such a precious thing?" Zhou was shocked. The identity certificate of the reincarnation will was also the key to opening the door to the Netherworld. If this thing was not used well, it might bring a huge disaster to the myriad worlds. My brother is actually willing to give me such an important thing. He is even willing to take the initiative to save me. He could not help but feel flattered. Take it. Don't stand on the ceremony with me. The reincarnation will looked at Zhou's expression and knew what he was thinking. He smiled and said, "Actually, I can also give you some methods to protect yourself in the Supreme Will realm, but that won't be safe. It's best if I come personally to ensure your safety to the greatest extent." "Brother, you're right." Zhou nodded in agreement. At the same time, he felt touched and emotional. As expected of the elder brother, he truly acknowledged. He hadn't acknowledged this elder brother for nothing. If something happened, he would really attack. However, he might go further. "Thank you, brother. With the insurance my brother gave me, I'm immediately relieved," Zhou said. Just as the reincarnation will nodded, he heard Zhou say in embarrassment, "Brother, can I ask you for 3 more drops of true blood? You also know that I obtained a will holy artifact, formless book. However, if this formless book doesn't have the true blood of a supreme will in it, the effect it can unleash will only be the effect of an ordinary supreme divine artifact. I want a few drops of your true blood to let me add another method to protect myself." After he finished speaking, he stared intently at the reincarnation will, wanting to see what expression would appear on its face. If the other party showed any unwillingness or impatience, Zhou would immediately take back his presumptuous request. Even though he wanted another means to protect him, he valued the friendship between him and the reincarnation will more. If there was a gap between him and the reincarnation will because of this, it would not be worth it. Moreover, he already had the underworld token given to him by the reincarnation will. At the very least, he would definitely have no problem protecting himself when facing a supreme will realm expert. In that case, the matter of the true blood was no longer important. It was fine if he wanted it. It was not a big problem to not want it anymore. Then, he saw the reincarnation will say without hesitation, "Sure, isn't it just 3 drops of true blood?" Chapter 1626, Advancing to the Advanced Stage will Divine Transformation Realm. He took out his sword, which was a low-level will holy artifact. He used a divine sword to make a small cut on his divine body. Dark purple divine blood flowed out of the wound endlessly and was received into a purple vessel by the reincarnation will. Then, when he wanted to connect more, he realized that his wound had already healed. When the reincarnation will saw this, it looked at the true blood in its vessel and smiled in satisfaction before handing it to Zhou. A total of 10 drops of true blood. You can use it first. If it's not enough, contact me directly through the 6 paths of reincarnation token. The reincarnation will smiled. Enough, enough. Thank you, brother. Zhou immediately said. He was very grateful to his brother in his heart. This elder brother really had nothing to say to him. Brother, just you wait. In the future, when I become rich, I will definitely help you revive the will of the Yellow River and let you two be together. Zhou made up his mind. Then, he received the 10 drops of true blood handed over by the reincarnation will. Then, he took out the formless book and placed the 10 drops of true blood on the page of the formless book. After placing them all, Zhou immediately probed them with his willpower. A moment later, a smile appeared on his face. According to his perception, due to the 10 drops of true blood given to him by the reincarnation will, the power of their will was full, pure, and fresh. Every true blood incarnation created by the true blood lock could display 1/10 of the strength of the reincarnation will at its peak. If Zhou was ruthless enough to use all 10 drops of true blood when facing the enemy, the combined combat strength of the 10 reincarnation will clones would cause even the reincarnation wills this divine being to be flustered for a while. It was enough to protect him. Zhou was very satisfied. He already had a rough idea of the arrangements for the 10 drops of true blood avatar. Is there anything else you haven't told me? If so, be sure to tell me. The reincarnation will looked at Zhou and said. No more, no more. Brother, go find your excellency, the will of the Yellow River. I see that you're so anxious that the fire in your heart is almost burning my face. Zhou smiled faintly. Reincarnation will smiled and did not care about Zhou's joke at all. He, indeed liked the will of the Yellow River. He had liked it since a long time ago. There was nothing embarrassing about an existence at his level. Sure. Then in going. The reincarnation will said. Brother, take care. The current him wouldn't be afraid of any enemy. The reincarnation will nodded and disappeared on the spot. After the reincarnation will left, Zhou stopped smiling and his expression became solemn. According to Brother Reincarnation, the land of inheritance of the Yellow River will open in 3 days. 3 days, at that time, my center of gravity should still be in the ultimate void battleground. No, the inheritance of the Supreme Will is extremely important. I can't be distracted. I have to urge Zhou Fight to strive to complete all the ultimate void battlefield missions in 3 days. Then, quickly call he out and let he go to the land of inheritance of the Yellow River's will to fight for the Supreme Will inheritance. Zhou thought. Even though he already had the inheritance of a Supreme Will realm existence, who would complain that there were too few such inheritances? Of course, the more the better. If he did not take what the heavens gave him, he would be punished. He already had top-notch quasi-supreme will realm combat strength and had true supreme will realm methods on him. With such good conditions in hand, he definitely had to fight for it. Inform Zhou Fight now. When Zhou thought of this, he immediately informed Zhou Fight about this. Compared to the other clones, Zhou Fight, who had experienced many battles, was more reliable. Zhou Fight, who was resting in the ultimate void battlefield, immediately woke up when he heard Zhou's voice transmission. Then, after he heard Zhou's request, he immediately cursed. Is this main body ordering me around like a donkey? I'm a clone, not your ox. He complained for a long time, but in the end, he didn't say anything else and agreed to the main Bodhi's request. What a busy clone life. Zhou Fight lamented. Then, he continued to rest. On the other side, Zhou, who was in the reincarnation sacred palace, also heard Zhou Fight's complaints. He smiled. The clones all had their own personalities and thoughts. He wasn't surprised at all that he could complain like this. However, even though they was complaining, they were definitely on the same side as him. There was no doubt about that. Therefore, he was very confident in his clones and was willing to entrust them with heavy responsibilities. Then, he stopped thinking and sat down cross-legged again, entering the time world to cultivate again. He was going to make one last sprint to break through to the advanced grade will divine transformation realm. The next day, in the reincarnation sacred palace, Zhou Zhou sat cross-legged on the Tao comprehension futon. There was a light spot emitting a faint white light in front of his chest. That was the premier heart. In front of he floated the holy scripture of the heart that emitted a golden light. Under the two supreme treasures that assisted the growth of his will realm, Zhou Zhou felt his will realm rapidly increase. Soon, he reached that bottleneck and suddenly broke through, entering a brand new will realm. Success. It was unexpectedly and unprecedentedly smooth. Zhou Zhou did not expect his breakthrough to be so simple. There was only one simple reason. Looks like the limit of my will potential is definitely not at the will divine transformation realm. It's at least at the level of supreme will. It might even have the potential to transcend the level of will. Otherwise, the breakthrough wouldn't have been so smooth. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. It was good to have high potential. The feeling of breaking through was as simple as eating and drinking. Of course, the support of the premier heart and the holy scripture of the heart also played a huge role in his breakthrough. It also made Zhou Zhou like these two treasures even more. At the thought that the advanced grade will divine transformation realm was not the limit of these two treasures, he was even happier. I'm already at the advanced grade will divine transformation realm. Next, I have to slowly cultivate to the limit of the will divine transformation realm, then cultivate to the quasi-supreme will realm. Then, I'll seek a breakthrough and reach the will realm of the supreme will realm in one go. At that time, even if my main Buddha's strength is still that of a supreme god. However, at that time, even if I didn't rely on the treasures of the supreme will realm, I would still have a certain level of self-protection in front of the supreme will realm. Zhou Zhou thought. Once his will broke through to the supreme will realm, even if his main Buddha's divine spirit realm did not catch up, his strength would undergo a tremendous change. At the very least, it was not a problem for him to protect himself at the supreme will realm. Of course, it was only for self-protection. It was impossible for him to take the initiative to compete with the supreme will realm. There was still a huge difference between reaching the supreme will realm purely at the will realm and the true supreme will realm. If he really wanted to fight head-on, he would only be courting death. Chapter 1627, Supreme Unique Lord Talent, Lord of Peace. Two Legendary Dragons. 1. Zhou Zhou, who had broken through to advanced stage will divine transformation realm, was in a good mood. He stood up and walked around the reincarnation sacred palace a few times. Looking at his subordinates who were cultivating elsewhere in the reincarnation sacred palace, the smile on his face became more and more obvious. He could tell that these subordinates were about to break through. After the breakthrough, they would become another top expert of the blazing sun divine kingdom. Right at that moment, he noticed his two subordinates. One of them was War Master God Terence. The other was his blazing sun divine kingdom's deputy commander, Qi Xiantian. At this moment, they was sitting cross-legged in their respective cultivation rooms. Their souls and wills were wandering around the time world to cultivate arduously. They exuded a powerful force of will. This force of will was active and unstable, as if it wanted to break the cage, but it was difficult to break it at the moment. However, they had a calm expression and a very stable state of mind. Clearly, they had expected this scene. As expected, even though they could not break through for the time being, this bottleneck clearly could not stop them. Sooner or later, they would break through the bottleneck and advance to another level. When Zhou Zhou saw this scene, he immediately realized something. The two gods were attempting to break through to the supreme god level. And the probability of success was not low. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Then, he turned and left. He was unable to help them on the obstacles they were facing. Before he broke through, he could still help a little. But since the breakthrough had already begun, he couldn't help even if he wanted to. Furthermore, Zhou Zhou also believed in them. Since they had chosen this moment to break through, they definitely had the reason to be confident in breaking through. There was no need for him to interfere. Otherwise, he might do something bad out of goodwill. Then, he returned to him Dao Comprehension Hasek and sat down cross-legged. With a thought, he summoned a Lord Talent panel. This interface was none other than the new Supreme Unique Lord Talent that he had obtained from absorbing Lord Talent crystal fragments and Lord Talent spheres during his night of cultivation. He looked over expectantly. Lord Talent, Master of Peace, Supreme, Unique, Peaceful Times, Territory Folk Customs Type Lord Talent. Your territory is very prosperous and stable. The country's politics are clear, the subjects live and work in peace. Do your job, the people do their best, and make the best use of things. There will be no legacy, no closed doors at night, the wind and rain are smooth, and there will be no disasters. All the subjects are very satisfied with their current life and respect and love you. At the same time, they did not lose their drive to improve. Through their individual efforts and collective cooperation, they would improve their personal lives and the development of the country's society. The gods of the myriad worlds would also admire your territory and think that your territory was a land of eternal blessings. There would be an endless stream of god spirits, true god tiers, master god tiers, and supreme gods coming to join your territory and become your subjects. Your subjects will have a basic loyalty value to you. As the time you live in the territory increases day by day, the loyalty of your subjects will gradually increase. Specific Talent Effect 1, your subjects' loyalty to you is 90 points. Specific Talent Effect 2, subjects with 90 to 99 loyalty will have their loyalty increased by 1 point every day they live in your territory. The upper limit is 99 loyalty. Specific Talent Effect 3, a subject with 99 loyalty will automatically be promoted to your fanatic believer after living in your territory for 3 days. Specific Talent Effect 4, your fanatic believer will automatically be promoted to your Holy Spirit believer after living in the territory for 10 days. Specific Talent Effect 5, not only will there be no natural disasters in your territory, but there will also occasionally be auspicious signs of heaven and earth descending on your territory, bringing blessings to your territory. Specific Talent Effect 6, within your territory, the soil is fertile, and it is easier to grow high-value crops. Specific Talent Effect 7, when your territory's subjects manufacture goods, they will wholeheartedly and with the highest quality. All users who have used the goods produced by your territory will trust the quality of the goods produced by your territory very much and will insist on buying and using them. Specific Talent Effect 6, the subjects in your territory are simple and hardworking, healthy and intelligent. It's easier to create inventions that can change the lives of the people and the country through hard work and intelligence. Specific Talent Effect 7, your territory is famous. The myriad worlds know that your territory is the peaceful times in a chaotic world. You are the ruler of peace that can bring peace and prosperity to the myriad worlds. Unexpected benefits will descend on you and your territory. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. This Lord of Peace was originally an extraordinary tier Lord Talent, Peaceful Times. Now that he had advanced to the Supreme Unique Lord Talent, his talent abilities in all aspects had been greatly strengthened. First of all, most importantly, after becoming the Supreme Unique Lord Talent, the Lord of Peace could now be effective against the Supreme Gods. In the future, Zhou Zhou would no longer have to worry about the fact that the Supreme Gods from the outside world were not very loyal and did not dare to invest more in them and entrust them with heavy responsibilities. Now that he had the Master of Peace, he could finally boldly appoint a Supreme God in the future. Secondly, the current Lord of Peace's basic loyalty alone had reached an astonishing 90 points. 90 loyalty points. Chapter 1628, Supreme Unique Lord Talent, Lord of Peace. 2 legendary dragons. 2. This was an extremely exaggerated value. Subjects with this value, even if they were not dead loyal, were not much different from them. It could be said that he could trust the other party's loyalty unconditionally. Furthermore, the subsequent specific talent effects of 2, 3, and 4 could increase this loyalty to the level of fanatic believers or even Holy Spirit tier believers. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. If it was an ordinary God spirit, they would definitely be very happy after seeing these few talent effects. This was because the Lord talent of being able to give birth to so many fanatic believers and even Holy Spirit tier believers meant that even if they only relied on faith to become a God spirit, they could still use the endless power of faith to forcefully raise their divine position to the level of a grade 4 Supreme God. The power of faith was a very magical power. It was almost omnipotent. It was comparable to the power of laws. With enough power of faith, even an ordinary person who did not understand any laws could be promoted to a God spirit or even a top Supreme God. Furthermore, with enough power of faith, it could push a grade 4 Supreme God to the realm of supreme willpower or even willpower. However, this was not something that could be done with just enough willpower. There were many inheritances of top Supreme Gods in Zhou Zhou's mind. Many of them had encountered existences who wanted to use the power of faith to break through the bottleneck and advance to the Supreme Will realm. Most of them had enough power of faith but they were stumped by a difficult problem. That was how to understand the will contained in one's faith. If one could not understand the power of will and faith, they would not be able to advance to the Supreme Will realm. This was also the reason why many grade 4 Supreme Gods who believed in becoming gods could not use the power of faith to advance to the Supreme Will realm. The difficulty for him was even more difficult than that of other God spirits. Speaking of which, Zhou Zhou was also very satisfied with the other innate abilities apart from increasing his loyalty. Then, he watched for a while and thought for a long time before leaving the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and heading for Mu Gus' residence. In the Mu estate, after Zhou Zhou arrived, he saw Wu Xian chatting with Mu Gu. Seeing the arrival of His Majesty, Mu Gu and Wu Xian immediately stood up and said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Your Majesty. I've already finished dealing with all the nest monsters. These are all the spoils of war," Wu Xian said excitedly. Then, he handed the 3 world rings to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou took it with a smile and then inserted the power of will into it expectantly. When he saw the treasures inside, he couldn't help but take a deep breath before a smile appeared on his face. Among the 2 world rings, one of them contained 1,000 capital units Supreme God Realm Soldier recruitment books and 1,000 capital units Supreme Holy Mage God recruitment books. The other world ring contained 1,000 capital units Supreme God Realm Soldier Class Change Certificate and 1,000 capital units Supreme Holy Mage God Class Change Certificate. The last world rings contained other loots. Good. Zhou Zhou sounded excited. This was a total of 8,000 capital units recruitment books and class change certificates. He only had 1,000 soldiers from the capital units under his command. The gains from the Scarlet Broodmother this time had directly brought his overall military strength close to 2 Guy units. Among all the supreme god-level forces in the myriad worlds, a force of his level could be considered unique. Furthermore, among these two Guy unit troops, the weakest soldier was an epic tier advance grade. It doesn't sound very high. However, with the addition of the two Guy unit troops as the prerequisite, this number was extremely terrifying. He sighed in his heart. Zhou Zhou handed the world ring containing the class change certificate to the other party. Legion Commander Wu. As usual, you should find a reserve recruit to change your occupation. This emperor will go to the gate of summoning to recruit new recruits. He said. Yes, Your Grace. Wu Xian said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, Wu Xian took his leave. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he also left Mu Gus' residence and flew towards the gate of summoning. Before the gate of summoning, then, he came directly to the gate of summoning. He first called for an eternal battleship of the Master God tier advance grade, then threw all the recruitment books in. Finally, he spent 100 intermediate true God tier divine crystals to recruit all of them in one go and arranged them on this eternal battleship. Then, he looked over. A total of 4,000 capital units epic tier advance grade troops were neatly arranged in the inner world of the eternal battleship. Zhou Zhou looked at their strict military discipline and nodded in satisfaction. Then, he got Zero to lead the 2,000 capital units army to look for Zhou Marshal. Then, he opened the original Dragon Abyss interface of the Gate of Summoning and spent 100 Master God tier elementary grade divine crystals to summon 66,666,600 pure-blooded dragons. He also placed them on the Eternal Mothership. Then, he carefully observed these dragons and was surprised to discover that there were two pure-blooded dragons among them. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. The probability of summoning two pure-blooded dragons was not low. He wasn't very surprised to be able to summon it. He looked over carefully. Of the two legendary dragons, one was made of pure gold metal and looked very dazzling. Even the yellow-gold sacred dragon race was probably inferior to this legendary dragon in terms of appearance. The other legendary dragon was pale white, and its surface was made up of scales engraved with words. His eyes were deep, and his gaze was deep and calm, as if he was a wise man who had read many historical books. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. Legendary dragon, sacred dragon of metal. Legendary dragon, the holy dragon of civilization. He muttered to himself. He could already tell the identities of the two legendary dragons. The metal holy dragon was born from the metal law and was the favorite of metal in the supreme great cosmos. It could be said to have a unique advantage in the metal law. In terms of talent in the law of gold, no one below the supreme god dared to say that the law of gold was second. As for the holy dragon of civilization, he was born from the laws of civilization. The birth of the law of civilization was much later than the birth of other legendary dragons. When most of the other legendary dragons were born, this holy dragon of civilization was just born. But the other legendary dragons had more or less reincarnated once or twice. Even the first venerable of the primordial dragon had been killed by the dragon slayer in ancient times and reincarnated once. But not the holy dragon of civilization. This was because the holy dragon of civilization was born from the civilization of all races. As long as the flames of civilization were not extinguished, the holy dragon of civilization would not fall. How could the flames of civilization be extinguished? Unless the supreme great cosmos returned to the chaos and began a new round of evolution, the flames of civilization born from life forms could not be destroyed. This was also the reason why the holy dragon of civilization had never fallen since its birth. Moreover, because the holy dragon of civilization was born among the civilizations of the various races, his own memories recorded all the inheritances of the various races. Even when the original spirit race, the chaos gods race, and the shepherd's god race were at their peak, the Holy Dragon of Civilization remembered the civilization heritage of the three top bloodlines. Because of the Holy Dragon of Civilization's ability, all the races in the world had thought of various ways to hunt the Holy Dragon of Civilization and make it unable to revive forever. But soon, they found that they could not do it. This was because the Holy Dragon of Civilization was immortal. But, they quickly thought of another way. That was to seal the Holy Dragon of Civilization. As long as the Holy Dragon of Civilization could be permanently sealed, so that he would never be able to reveal the inheritance of the myriad races in his mind, the existence of the Holy Dragon of Civilization was nothing to worry about. But soon, they failed again. This was because the Holy Dragon of Civilization possessed a secret technique that could be stored in the flames of civilization. With the help of this secret technique, countless experts of the various races could not find the Holy Dragon of Civilization, which made the sealing method prepared by they unable to be used. However, the Holy Dragon of Civilization was also very smart. He knew that he held a legacy that even all the races in the world were unwilling to let him speak. For the sake of his own freedom and safety, the Holy Dragon of Civilization made an agreement with the powerhouses of the myriad races. He would never reveal any information about the important inheritance of the myriad races to the outside world. This was to make the myriad races let he off and let him live a good life. After the myriad races made a supreme oath with the Holy Dragon of Civilization, they finally let the Holy Dragon of Civilization off completely, allowing the Holy Dragon of Civilization to live to this day without any disasters. Zhou did not expect this either. He had actually summoned the other party. He was really lucky. Zhou thought to himself. Chapter 1629, Tens of Thousands of New Master Gods. Qi Xiantian Terrence advancing to the Supreme God Realm. 1. Zhou wanted to build the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom into the strongest Lord faction in the myriad worlds. Other than needing sufficient wealth, powerhouses, trump cards, military strength, god spirits, and other powerful country factors, there was another important constituent factor: foundation. To be precise, it should be the heritage of a civilization. A top-notch Lord faction, especially a top-notch Lord faction that contained one or more races, definitely had to have enough civilization heritage. Otherwise, their country's subjects would not have enough confidence to speak in front of other subjects with sufficient civilization heritage. It's possible that you don't understand what people are talking about. If you don't understand, how are you going to communicate with the subjects of other Lord factions? As for the inheritance of the myriad races that the Holy Dragon of Civilization possessed, there was no doubt that it could make up for the weakness of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's lack of foundation. Even though Zhou also had many bloodline inheritances in his mind that could be used to make up for the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's lack of foundation, furthermore, he had indeed done so. He had even taken out the bloodline inheritances of all races and gathered them together to form a myriad races inheritance tower. It could allow the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom under he to spend subject contribution points to read and understand the myriad races inheritance tower's inheritances, thereby improving their personal civilization heritage. However, the bloodline inheritance that he possessed was still too scattered. There was no way to form a specific and complete civilization inheritance system. It was completely incomparable to a civilization inheritance recorder like the Holy Dragon of Civilization that had no blind spots. But now, as soon as the Holy Dragon of Civilization arrived, all these problems could be solved. As long as he could transplant all the inheritances of the myriad races in the Holy Dragon of Civilization's brain into the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's inheritance and education database, then let all the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom learn. It wouldn't be long before the subjects of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom became the most comprehensive Lord faction among the life forms of the myriad races in the world. Thinking of this, Zhou Zhou could not help but be filled with anticipation. In order to verify whether this idea was feasible, he immediately moved the Golden Dragon and Holy Dragon of Civilization over from the Eternal Battleship. Golden Dragon, Zez, greetings, Your Majesty. The Holy Dragon of Civilization, Ku Luo, greets Your Majesty. The two legendary dragons immediately greeted Zhou Zhou respectfully. They, who had a basic loyalty of 90 points, felt a sense of loyalty and reverence for Zhou Zhou the moment they saw him. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he smiled and nodded, thinking that this ruler of peace was really useful. Then, he did not say anything else. He first chatted briefly and politely with the Golden Dragon of Civilization before immediately communicating with it eagerly. When he asked the Holy Dragon of Civilization if he could take out the legacy of his civilization and contribute it to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, the Holy Dragon of Civilization's eyes lit up, and he agreed without hesitation. Zhou Zhou found it strange. Don't you feel uncomfortable with this request of this emperor wanting the inheritance of your entire civilization? He asked curiously. Your Majesty, you worry too much. In fact, in my opinion, civilizations can only improve on each other by communicating with each other and absorbing the essence of each other's civilizations. Only then can they produce a more dazzling civilization. Ever since I was born, I've wanted to spread the inheritance of civilization in my mind to the myriad worlds. However, the myriad races in the world have been restricted by their race's standpoint. They have always forbidden me from doing such a thing. They even wanted to kill me at one point and asked me to forbid reincarnation and return to the supreme great cosmos. Later, after they realized that I couldn't be killed, they tried to seal me again, but they didn't succeed. It was only then that they realized that I had an indestructible and powerful ability that could not be sealed. However, later on, in order to be free and safe, and to not be constantly harassed, I had no choice but to sign a supreme oath with they not to leak the inheritance of my race. Even so, I didn't want to at the time. I had to do it. Your Majesty, after hearing your thoughts, I was very excited because I felt that I could finally take out the legacies of the various races and civilizations that I have and benefit the myriad worlds. The Holy Dragon of Civilization was extremely excited. Zhou Zhou could tell that the other party really wanted to use the legacy of these races and civilizations to benefit the life forms. This emperor is very pleased that you have such thoughts. But this emperor won't lie to you. This emperor will say the ugly things first. This emperor doesn't intend to unconditionally spread the inheritance of the race and civilization you took out to the myriad worlds. This emperor only intends to disseminate it within the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Moreover, even if it's domestically disseminated, this emperor also intends to disseminate it in a conditional manner. For example, through the subject's contribution levels and the number of contribution points they spend, they can unlock the corresponding knowledge of racial civilizations. Are you willing to do that? Zhou Zhou looked at him and asked. I do. The Holy Dragon of Civilization replied without hesitation. Then, he smiled and said, Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'm not stupid. Free is worthless. I understand this simple principle. I don't want other life forms to treat the legacies of the races and civilizations as waste paper. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. As long as the Holy Dragon of Civilization cooperated well, his plan to build the most comprehensive myriad races inheritance tower in the myriad worlds would be much easier. Chapter 1630, Tens of Thousands of New Master Gods. Qi Xiantian Terrence advancing to the Supreme God Realm. 2. You can discuss this with our Divine Kingdom's Prime Minister Xing Yuanqi. This is this Emperor's order. You and he must do your best to carry it out. Zhou Zhou said. Yes, Your Grace. The holy dragon of civilization nodded respectfully. Then, he left excitedly. Then, Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on the golden divine dragon. He saw the other party looking at him adorably. What are you still doing here? Hurry up and report to the base of the main army and apply to join the Dragon God army. Zhou Zhou was speechless. Oh, oh. The gold dragon god left with a look of grief and indignation. They were both legendary dragons, but why was there such a huge gap between him and the holy dragon of civilization? Zhou Zhou shook his head as he watched the other party leave. He spent 1,000 low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine crystals to go to the Jade Capital Immortal Mountain to summon 100 heavenly venerates, celestial soldiers, heavenly generals, and heavenly venerates. Among the summoned heavenly soldiers and heavenly venerates, 99 of them were epic-tier advanced-grade soldiers. The remaining capital unit soldiers were legendary-tier advanced-grade soldiers. Furthermore, they were all heavenly generals and heavenly venerates. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Every time he saw that these recruits were so powerful, he would always be happy from the bottom of his heart. In the future, when he could create the Lord Talent of the Supreme Will Realm, he had to upgrade the heavenly summoning to the Supreme Will Realm. This way, he might be able to summon new recruits at the God Spirit Realm. That was a new recruit at the God Spirit Realm. When the time came, even the Supreme Will would probably be shocked by his summoning ability. Just as he was secretly looking forward to it. Swish, 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 swish. A total of 12,434 light pillars of various laws soared into the sky from the direction of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. When Zhou Zhou saw this, a smile appeared on his face. This was the true God tier who was preparing to break through yesterday. After a night, he had finally advanced from a true God tier advanced grade to Master God tier elementary grade. Not bad. This time, more than 10,000 true gods had been promoted to Master Gods. Such a magnificent scene was rarely seen in history. At the same time, the gods of the myriad worlds naturally saw the 10,000 beams of upgraded light. When they saw this scene, even though they had long been mentally prepared and had a premonition that there would be more and more new Master God tiers in the divine kingdom of the sun, they did not expect there to be so many this time. This was more than 10,000 supremacies. More than 10,000 clan-protecting experts. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom could produce more than 10,000 of them in a day. Is that reasonable? Even chives don't grow like this. Just as they was shocked, something even more shocking happened. Two completely different cosmic phenomena appeared within the star cores in the sky. These two phenomena were so huge and dazzling that they were not inferior to the military formation phenomenon and the holy dragon phenomenon that had appeared yesterday. One of the phenomena was a golden battle god who carried 9 yellow gold tier flags on his back and drove a yellow gold tier carriage. He led an army of billions of god spirits and killed wantonly in the enemy formation. The other phenomenon was a white-robed sword god surrounded by trillions of divine swords. The scene of billions of boundless universes prospering and dying appeared on the sword. Furthermore, these two cosmic phenomena were formed from the convergence of the divine kingdom stars. Furthermore, every divine kingdom star that formed the cosmic phenomenon was a Master God tier divine kingdom star. When they saw this scene, they immediately realized what had happened. But it was precisely because of this that they found it even more unbelievable. Could this be another phenomenon of the birth of a supreme god? And it originated from the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom could easily give birth to a Master God tier. It took me a long time to barely accept it. Why is it so easy for he to give birth to a supreme god? If I remember correctly, yesterday, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom already gave birth to 2 supreme gods, right? How long has it been? 2 more supreme gods have been born. Unbelievable. Could it be that the birth of a supreme god in the blazing sun divine kingdom is as simple as the birth of a master god? There are only more than 10,000 supreme gods in the entire supreme great cosmos, and this is the total number of supreme gods accumulated over countless years in the supreme great cosmos. What right does the blazing sun divine kingdom have? For supreme gods can actually be born in 2 days. At this rate, the total number of supreme gods in the entire supreme great cosmos might change because of a lord faction in the blazing sun divine kingdom. Exaggeration, exaggeration. I now understand why the Supreme Will would choose to end the Lord of all races competition early and let the common people's regal become the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army. If it were me, I would do the same. If it were me, I would have to worship him. How is this still a Supreme Lord Reserve Army? If the total number of supreme gods in the supreme great cosmos really changed because of the common people's regal alone, then the common people's regal would be the lucky star of the entire supreme great cosmos. Even God King Heaven Punishment, Spring and Autumn Dharma Lord and Lord of 10,000 Evils wouldn't be able to do this, right? My view of the gods has been overturned. Why is it so difficult for me to become a true god? He seems to be able to easily give birth to supreme gods in the blazing sun divine kingdom. Could it really be, as the rumors in the myriad worlds say, that the blazing sun divine kingdom is the legendary land of supreme blessings, so whether it's a master god or a supreme god, they can be easily born? This won't do. I can't sit still anymore. I have to immediately head to the blazing sun divine kingdom and become the worshipper of the blazing sun divine kingdom's god spirits. It can be explained as a coincidence if a god spirit is born once or twice, but the blazing sun divine kingdom can clearly give birth to god spirits every day. In the beginning, they were only master god tiers, but now, even 2 supreme gods have begun to be born. The blazing sun divine kingdom definitely has a secret that can give birth to high-level god spirits. Regardless of whether it's a blessing or something else, I have to give it a try. Even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance, I have to go. Go, go, go. No wonder my deity friends are all migrating to the blazing sun divine kingdom. Even if they haven't migrated for the time being, they're still discussing the migration. I actually only reacted now. Take me with you. I'll go too. When the gods of the myriad worlds saw that even the supreme god and the blazing sun divine kingdom could be born in 2 consecutive days, they immediately went crazy. As god spirits, they had a heartfelt desire for a higher god spirit realm. Now that they had seen the blazing sun divine kingdom that could help, they have a higher chance of advancing to become a stronger god spirit. How could they still sit still? They could not wait to immediately appear in the blazing sun divine kingdom and become the offerings of the blazing sun divine kingdom's god spirits. They wanted to enjoy the secret of the blazing sun divine kingdom giving birth to higher-level god spirits and then promote themselves to higher-level god spirits. But it can't be rushed. Furthermore, they also knew that the blazing sun divine kingdom now had the conditions to select subjects and god spirits to join. Subjects and god spirits who had committed serious crimes were not allowed to join the blazing sun divine kingdom. They could already imagine it. The subjects and god spirits, who had once made a huge mistake that incurred the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of mankind, had expressions of regret for the rest of their lives because they had been rejected by the blazing sun divine kingdom. At the same time, Zhou looked at the supreme god's advancement phenomenon in the sky and nodded in satisfaction. Terence and Qi Xiantian did not disappoint him. Now, he had successfully advanced to a supreme god. He had 2 more peerless generals under him. More than an hour later, the advancement phenomenon in the starry sky gradually dissipated. After all the advancement phenomena dissipated, 12,434 light pillars of laws of various colors and 2 especially huge light pillars of laws soared into the sky from the reincarnation sacred palace. Then, they flew towards Zhou Zhou and quickly landed in front of him. They were the 12,434 newly promoted Master God tiers, Terence, and Qi Xiantian, the two newly promoted Supreme Gods. After they arrived, they immediately kowtowed to Zhou Zhou in unison and said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty, for bestowing us with this inheritance. We have all successfully advanced to become Master God tier elementary grade God spirits." After they finished speaking, Terence and Qi Xiantian immediately said respectfully and gratefully, "Greetings, Your Majesty. I, Terence/Qi Xiantian, have also successfully advanced to a Grade 1 Supreme God. Thank you, Your Majesty, for bestowing me with the inheritance of the Supreme Gods." Zhou Feit nodded with a smile and said, "This Emperor is very happy to see you guys advance, especially Terence and Qi Xiantian. You guys are not bad. The rules will not change. This Emperor will also hold a promotion ceremony for you tonight." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The deities respectfully expressed their gratitude. Among them, Terence, the former Master God of War and the current Supreme God of War, was especially emotional. As one of the 10 Master Gods in the past, after they joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, they thought that one day, His Majesty would be able to help they become Supreme Gods. Now this dream has come true, and it has come true so quickly. Terence did not know how to describe his excitement. Chapter 1631, Explosive Military Strength. Beginning Mission. 1. Right at that moment, he noticed some burning gazes landing on him. He looked over. It was the Goddess of Life and the other 9 Master Gods. He smiled at they and gave them an encouraging look. When Tritis and the others saw this scene, they immediately looked forward to it. Now, there was an example of Terence being the first to advance to the Supreme God level. They also gained some confidence in their future. They was not inferior to Terence after all. What Terence had, they also had. Now that Terence had become a Supreme God with His Majesty's help, why couldn't they do so in the future? At the same time, after chatting with the newly promoted God spirits for a while, Zhou Zhou rewarded each Master God with a set of Master God tier elementary grade divine artifact suits. As for Qi Xiantian and Terence, Zhou Zhou also gave them a set of Grade 1 Supreme God divine artifacts that matched their path of laws. Then, he got them to look for Zheng Yuanqi to collect their jobs and worshipped God spirit salaries. After they left, Zhou Feit calculated the strength of his main combat army. Including the 8,000 new recruits from the capital units that had been recruited and changed today, there were 66,666,666,000 pure-blooded dragons, 100 heavenly soldiers from the capital units, 12,434 new Master Gods, and 2 new Supreme Gods. The troops under him had already reached 1 Gai unit 9,110 capital units 7,312,349,172,638,978 soldiers, 2,492,396,999,994 God spirits, 7,357,783,439 true gods, 95,431 Master Gods, and 55 Supreme Gods. At this point, Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. An explosive increase of 8,000 capital units recruits in a day. What was there to be dissatisfied about? If it were top-notch supreme willpower forces like the Sun Divine Court or the Great Lunar Court, if they could recruit 8,000 new recruits in a day, and they were recruits whose strength was at least at the Epic Tier Advanced grade, they would probably wake up every day with a smile. Then, Zhou Zhou sensed the lower limit of the potential of the Blazing Sun God race's citizens. Then, a smile appeared on his face again. Mid-tier deity level elementary grade. After obtaining 3,761 newly advanced Master God tiers, the potential of the Blazing Sun God race had shockingly broken through to the level of a mid-tier deity-level elementary grade. In addition, the newly promoted Supreme God of the human race, Bai Yun, Qi Xiantian, and Zhou Zhou had also contributed to the advancement of the Blazing Sun God race's lower limit of potential. Them becoming a Supreme God was equivalent to 1,000 new Master God tiers. 3 people advancing to the Supreme God level was equivalent to providing 3,000 new Master God tiers of the human race. In addition to the original 3,761 new Master Gods of the human race, meant there were 6,761 new Master Gods of the human race. They contributed to the advancement of the human race's lower limit of potential. Then, Zhou Zhou closed his eyes and sensed how many new Master Gods the Blazing Sun God race needed to advance from a mid-tier deity-level elementary grade to intermediate grade. A moment later, Zhou Zhou opened his eyes. The answer was 5,000. Isn't that nice? Zhou Zhou stroked his chin. He only had 4,761 new Master Gods left after the advancement from low-tier deity level advanced grade to mid-tier deity level. In other words, with another 239 new Master Gods of the human race, the lower limit of the potential of the humans under, he could be upgraded from a mid-tier deity level elementary grade to mid-tier deity level intermediate grade. It seemed like he would be able to hear the good news that the Blazing Sun God race's potential had increased again tonight. Then, he stopped thinking and returned to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to continue cultivating. At the same time, Zhou Marshall had already brought Thanatos, Nazario, and 10,000 Master God tier advanced grade God spirits to the Chaos Sea. They quickly found the spacetime chaotic divine demon. There were a total of 105 chaotic divine demons beside the 4 chaotic divine demons. Zhou Marshall was shocked when he saw this. This was the first time they had seen them bring more than 100 chaotic divine demons. He nodded slightly and brought the god spirits to them. Greetings, Your Majesty. Greetings, Lord Supreme God of Death, Lord Abyssal Holy Dragon. The 4 chaotic divine demons, Space, Ancestor Wind, and Spirit Shadow, immediately said respectfully when they saw Zhou Marshall and them. Zhou Marshall nodded. After chatting briefly with them, he gave the spacetime chaotic divine demon a total of 420 Master God tier divine artifacts. Then, he wiped out the 105 chaotic divine demons with a single palm strike. After extracting the loots, he obtained a total of 336 Chaos Divine Treasures. Then, they went to the ruins of the Chaos of Death and obtained another 170 units of Chaos Divine Treasures. At this point, the number of Chaos Divine Treasures in his hands had already reached 1,882 units. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly, he was one step closer to advancing to a high-level Master God tier kingdom. Then, he looked at the entrance to the time ruins in front of him and stroked his chin in thought. He did not see his reincarnated brother on this trip to the time ruins. It seemed Brother Reincarnation had already left. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He opened the warp gate of the Shadow World and met up with the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom led by Zhou Win. They began to conquer the other territories on the High Continent. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom now occupied 3/10 of the entire High Continent. To be honest, this territory was already very terrifying. However, Zhou Zhou and his clones were naturally not satisfied with this. His goal was to fight the entire High Continent. Therefore, the pace of conquest could not be stopped. At the same time, at the ultimate void battlefield, Zhou Fight and Lord of 10,000 Evils were chatting outside the Sky Void Mystic Realm. Behind the two gods stood an army of hundreds of billions of god spirits. Among them, there were nearly 100 supreme god-level powerhouses. Chapter 1632, Explosive Military Strength. Beginning Mission. 2. Even though Zhou Fight's Supreme God subordinates accounted for nearly half of the total number, the Lord of 10,000 Evils had a total of 34 Supreme God subordinates. When Zhou Fight saw this, he smiled and said, "Brother Demon Lord's forces have increased again. There are already so many Supreme God-level experts. You must be joking." Even though the Lord of 10,000 Evils' tone was humble, the smugness and confidence in his eyes couldn't be concealed. "I originally didn't have so many Supreme Gods under my command, but during this period of time, I've followed you through too many life and death battles. Some of my brothers under my command had some comprehension in these life and death battles. They were originally just one last bottleneck away from becoming Supreme Gods. With these comprehensions, they naturally advanced to become Supreme Gods. However, even though I have many Supreme Gods under me, I don't have as many Supreme Gods as Big Brother." When the Lord of 10,000 Evils said this, he looked at the 50 Supreme Gods in Zhou Fight's army with envy. "Brother, when you first came to the Ultimate Void battleground, you didn't even have a Supreme God by your side. Now there are already 50 Supreme Gods. With the growth rate of such forces, even if God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring and Autumn Dharma Lord were to come, they would be ashamed of their inferiority." Zhou was speechless. This Lord of 10,000 Evils had been addressing him as Big Brother ever since he had displayed the strength of a quasi-supreme willpower realm expert yesterday. He had explained many times that he didn't need to be so polite, but he had said that he really wanted to acknowledge him as Big Brother. A third reserve member of the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army called the newly promoted Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army Big Brother. He was simply rebelling against the Big Dipper. However, since he was willing, Zhou Fight couldn't be bothered to correct him. There was no way he would admit that he was actually secretly delighted. That's too much. Zhou Fight naturally did not think that he was stronger than God King Heaven Punishment and Dharma Lord Spring and Autumn. Of the two existences, Your Excellency was a peerless genius who had awakened the mythical tier and the only Lord Talent as soon as he awakened his Lord Talent. The God King Heaven Punishment was even more terrifying. It was said that when he was first born, a supreme phenomenon appeared in the myriad worlds. It seemed to be celebrating the birth of God King Heaven Punishment. Later on, the Supreme will personally came to see the infant God King Heaven Punishment. He even said that the other party had the potential of a Supreme will in the future and personally accepted the infant God King Heaven Punishment as his disciple. Later on, he even made the other party the Supreme Lord's 1st Reserve Army. The rapid rise in his status naturally allowed God King Heaven Punishment to receive thousands of praises. At the same time, there were also many existences. There were even existences at the Supreme Will realm who secretly framed him. However, later on, the God King Heaven Punishment's growth speed and the things he did ruthlessly slapped them in the face. He had many achievements in his life. One of the most terrifying achievements was that he had advanced to the Supreme Will realm at the age of 100. He became a peerless expert who spent the shortest time to become a Supreme Will realm expert in the myriad worlds. The other achievement that made the experts of the various heavens not dare to criticize God King Heaven Punishment too much was, the God King Heaven Punishment's reputation was forcefully forged. It was said that the era that the God King Heaven Punishment lived in was the era of demons and chaos. The myriad worlds were threatened by a top-notch bloodline race called the Demon Evil God race. In that era, even the original Spirit race, Shepherd's God race, and Chaos God's race had to retreat when the Demon Evil God race was at its peak. They did not dare to offend the dignity of the Demon Evil God race. However, God King Heaven Punishment had risen all the way. He had relied on his supreme lightning technique and the Heaven Punishment army that he had nurtured to completely exterminate the Demon Evil God race. Because the God King Heaven Punishment hated the Demon Evil God clan, the demon evil god clan was completely destroyed. Now that things have come to this. In the myriad worlds were very few records of the history of the demonic god clan. This was the most powerful proof. He was young and terrifyingly powerful. Destroying the demon evil god clan and establishing the other party's supreme reputation. This was also the reason why the legend of God King Heaven punishment still circulated in the myriad worlds, especially among those top-notch experts. In fact, many peerless experts were still fanatical fans of the God King Heaven punishment. All the experts who had experienced the rise of God King Heaven punishment had a deep impression of him. This was also the reason why many experts thought that Zhou was inferior to God King Heaven punishment, even though he had already achieved many unbelievable achievements and even caused the Supreme Will to end the Lord of all Races competition in advance and personally conferred him the position of the 4th Reserve Army. They could not forget the once invincible Divine King. Speaking of which, when Lord of 10,000 Evils saw that Zhou Fight wasn't willing to talk much, he chuckled and didn't say much about this matter. Instead, he said, "Brother common people, I've already seen you accept all the other missions other than conquering the ultimate void sacred realm. What are you trying to do? What else?" Zhou Fight looked at he strangely. "To complete the mission, of course. It's all to save trouble. I don't have to come back every time I finish a mission." The Lord of 10,000 Evils clicked his tongue and couldn't help but say, "Dude, you really want to finish all the missions? Or what? Keep the possible troubles?" Zhou Fight shook his head and said, "I don't want to stay in this cold and boring ultimate void battleground for the rest of my life. The sooner I solve the problem here, the sooner I can leave." The ultimate void battleground was indeed boring. At a glance, other than those void mystic realms and main cities, there was nothing else. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to complete the mission given to him by the Supreme Will, he wouldn't have stayed here forever. The sooner he solved the problem here, the sooner he could leave this place. At the same time, he could also improve his Supreme Lord Reserve position. Big Brother is so bold. The Lord of 10,000 Evils couldn't help but sigh after being silent for a long time. Seeing Zhou fight like this, he also thought of his performance when he first arrived at the ultimate void battleground. At that time, wasn't he the same as Zhou fight, having overwhelming ambitions? However, after experiencing reality and understanding the strength of the ultimate void race, his former ambitions had already been lost without him noticing. As a result, before Zhou arrived, he only wanted to defend the sanctuary under his feet and did not think of expanding outside. He was afraid that the ultimate void race would destroy his last team and leave him with nothing. He might even be blamed by the Supreme Will and lose his position as the 3rd Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord. Now, as he looked at Zhou fight, he seemed to see him in the past. However, what was completely different from his past self was that this common people's regal really had the strength to turn his words into reality. "Come on. Let's go to our first destination. Grade 1 Supreme God level war territory, Whirlpool Main City. We started conquering Grade 1 Supreme God war territories. All the way to Grade 4 war territories." Zhou Fight said. "Okay." The Lord of 10,000 Evils agreed without hesitation. He knew that this trip might be very dangerous. The ultimate void race would not allow them to attack their territory at will after all. However, he was willing to go crazy with his brother. It was not only to support his big brother, but also to respond to him back then. As for competing for the position of Supreme Lord, he no longer cared. Then, they did not waste any more time and immediately rushed to the Grade 1 Supreme God level war territory, Whirlpool Main City. The reason why Zhou Fight chose it was not only because he wanted to conquer the small city, but also because the territory of the Vortex War was very close to them. Since it was close and met his conquest requirements, there was no reason to give up what was near and seek what was far away. Half an hour later, Zhou Fight and Lord of 10,000 Evils led their army to the void outside the Whirlpool main city. Even though the city lord of Whirlpool main city, Yi Qi, had long heard of the reputation of the common people's regal being invincible and had made preparations for war in advance, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. In less than 15 minutes, this Whirlpool main city was forcefully destroyed by the army under Zhou Fight's command. In the territory of the Vortex War, other than the Whirlpool main city, there are two other secondary cities. Let's set off quickly and strive to capture them as soon as possible. Zhou Fight ordered. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun and the other generals immediately received their orders. After briefly cleaning up the battlefield, they headed to their next target. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.